Chapter 597. The truth made W.N. Shan and the others' faces turn ugly. However, Heifeng didn't seem to notice, or maybe he didn't care even if he did. He continued, "We have more than 10 primordial core realm cultivators in the Black Wolf Bastion. We are only here to recruit you along with Longhu." Recruitment. You will die if you don't agree. Is this the attitude of recruitment? I don't agree. W.N. Shan said loudly. At the same time, 6 primordial core realm cultivators rushed out from the mountain below. They flew over and stood behind W.N. Shan. They looked at the 3 coldly with murderous intent surging around them. There were 11 primordial core realm cultivators in total. 6 of them had elixir weapons, while the other 5 were barehanded. Heifeng and Yi Lang were still calm in the face of such obvious hostility. Heifeng took out 5 elixir weapons from his spirit ring and threw them to the 5 primordial core realm cultivators who didn't have elixir weapons. The 5 of them caught the elixir weapons subconsciously. They were stunned. Heifeng, what is the meaning of this? W.N. Shan said loudly. Obviously, he was also confused by Heifeng's actions. Nothing. I am just passing on the words of my master. He wants to tell you about the benefits of recruitment. Heifeng paused and said, "My master said that the benefits of recruiting primordial core realm cultivators are 1 elixir weapon and 100,000 upper-grade primordial stones a year." What? Everyone was shocked when they heard the number. They opened their eyes wide and looked at Heifeng in disbelief. W.N. Shan shouted, "Heifeng, do you think we are monkeys? 100,000 upper-grade primordial stones a year. I think it is 100,000 lower-grade primordial stones." Heifeng shook his head and said indifferently, "You don't have to worry about this. I am sure that it is 100,000 upper-grade primordial stones. It doesn't matter if it is a yearly payment or a monthly payment. However, you have to agree. My master needs primordial core realm cultivators to fight. He has made it clear before we came that anyone who refuses will be killed. All right. You know the benefits and consequences. As for life or death, you can choose." Heifeng and Yi Lang took a few steps back and left the battlefield to Longhu. The expressions of the 11 primordial core realm cultivators kept changing. They seemed to be hesitating. Longhu's cultivation was only in the air. They all had elixir weapons in their hands, but they were still terrified of him. Moreover, as their attention fell on Longhu, they realized that Longhu's head was extremely similar to the legendary divine dragon. This discovery caused their expressions to change again. "Do you believe that it can deal with all of us?" W.N. Shan held the elixir weapon. His gaze swept past Longhu and landed on Heifeng. "We still need to go and recruit the Dan essences of other forces. We don't have much time. You'd better make your choice quickly." This time, it was Wild Wolf who spoke. He seemed a little impatient. "You." W.N. Shan's expression turned even uglier. The 11 of them could not make a decision for a long time, and Longhu was also impatient. Suddenly, a brilliant light flashed around his body, and a powerful aura surged out of his body. Then, his body turned into a beam of light, and with a step in the air, he rushed toward the 11 primal core cultivators. Boom! It was as if they had been hit by a super-powerful cannonball. With a loud explosion, the 11 Dan Essence stage experts were sent flying. Screams rang out in the sky, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking. The 11 of them were sent flying, and their bodies smashed into the mountain below with a loud bang. Among them, one of the ordinary Dan Essence stage experts was even killed by Longhu's attack. The 10 Dan Essence stage experts stood up one after another. When they saw the dead Dan Essence stage expert, their expressions changed drastically. Their eyes were filled with fear and shock. "Submit, or die." Longhu's cold eyes swept across the group of Dan Essence stage experts below, and his body surged with unrestrained killing intent. "Submit, we choose to submit." Longhu's powerful strength deeply shocked them, and the 10 Dan Essence stage experts hurriedly agreed. Even Wild Wolf and Heifeng were shocked when they saw the 11 Dan Essence stage experts being sent flying, and one of them even died. The 2 of them looked at each other, and at the same time, they were glad that they had made the right choice. The 10 of them were successfully recruited, and then they obediently followed the three of them to find the next force. With the powerful Longhu around, the recruitment would obviously be very smooth. Flapping the heavenly thunder wings, Zichen rushed at full speed. It only took him a day to reach the core formation pavilion. "My lord, the core formation pavilion is in front." Dan Essence pointed at the peak in front of them and said respectfully. It was a towering mountain peak, but half of it had been forcefully chopped off by a sharp blade. The core formation pavilion was located on top of it. "My lord, flying is not allowed here. Everyone who comes here has to walk up the stairs. That Dan Essence stage expert is on the peak." Dan Essence also told him that there was a rule here, and other Dan Essence stage experts were not allowed to come close. "My lord, please go up. I will wait here," Dan Essence said respectfully, then turned and left. Zichen nodded and walked straight up the stone stairs. The stone stairs meandered to the peak, but it was very narrow, and only allowed one person to walk. Zichen originally thought that there was something strange about the stone stairs, and that it could be used to test one's cultivation. However, when he stepped on it, it was just like walking on ordinary stone stairs, and there was nothing special about it. During this time, Zichen also saw many cultivators at the peak of the Zephyr realm climbing up the stone stairs, one step at a time, as they walked towards the peak. These were all Zephyrs who feared the heavenly lightning tribulation. They had chosen to form their core here. If they did not have a fortuitous encounter, they would be stuck at the early Dan Essence stage, and would never be able to reach the middle Dan Essence stage. Suddenly, a ray of light flew over Zichen's head. It was a human figure, and the aura of Dan Essence stage surged around him. "Haha, I have finally broken through to the Dan Essence stage, and become a Dan Essence old monster. Chaos lands, I have come." The figure flew from the peak to the horizon, and seemed very excited. His loud laughter resounded in the sky. Breaking through to the Dan Essence stage was equivalent to the Master stage in the Barbarian land. It was indeed an extremely powerful existence, and to be able to break through to this stage was naturally something to be proud of. Unfortunately, without the heavenly lightning tribulation, this kind of strength and pride would be reduced after leaving this place. It was indeed Dan Essence stage, but it was the weakest and most ordinary Dan Essence stage. As soon as he arrived, he saw a Dan Essence stage expert fly out. Zichen was very surprised, but what surprised him even more was that it was actually possible to fly here. When Dan Essence stage experts said that one could only walk and not fly, it was obviously aimed at Zephyrs who came to form their core, and not Dan Essence stage experts. This was obviously a man-made rule, and not the rule of the core formation pavilion itself. Thus, without saying anything, Zichen leaped up and flew towards the peak. The moment Zichen leaped into the air, the Zephyrs who were climbing the stone steps saw him and exclaimed in surprise. However, after realizing that Zichen was only at the late Zephyr realm, a trace of pity appeared on their faces. Faintly, Zichen could hear murmurs of not knowing the rules, not knowing the meaning of death, and so on. Flying was naturally faster than climbing the stone steps. In just 2 breaths, Zichen reached the peak and stood in the air, looking down. The peak was smooth and flat, as if it was cut by a sharp blade. The area was several miles, like a wide square, and the huge core formation pavilion was located at the center of the square. The core formation pavilion was like a pavilion. It was made of stone, but the stone surface of the core formation pavilion was engraved with some complicated and mysterious patterns. It was these patterns that blocked the heavenly secrets, allowing Zephyr realm cultivators to fly by deceiving the heavens. The core formation pavilion was very big, enough to accommodate dozens of people. However, the strange thing was that there was only one Zephyr realm cultivator meditating in the pavilion. Other than that, there were close to 100 Zephyr realm cultivators in the huge square in a long line, seemingly waiting to enter the core formation pavilion. Zichen's figure leaping into the air was naturally noticed by everyone. Thus, everyone raised their heads, and after sensing Zichen's strength at the late Zephyr realm, they looked at Zichen with extreme pity and disdain. A mere late Zephyr realm cultivator dares to break the rules and fly up here. He's courting death. He's probably a hothead who doesn't know where this place is, and that's why he came up here. It's a pity that he doesn't know that running around in the chaotic lands is suicide. In the chaotic lands, the only outcome for those who break the rules is death. A group of Zephyr Realm cultivators who were waiting to form their core formation pavilion gave Zi Chen a death sentence without hesitation. Flying in the core formation pavilion is forbidden. Those who break the rules will die. However, the overlord who was guarding the place was even more direct. He, who was near the core formation pavilion, raised his hand and blasted out a beam of energy, slashing at Zi Chen in the air. When the beam of energy flew into the air, it turned into a sharp blade, emitting a powerful aura, and slashed at Zi Chen's head. Boom! Zi Chen swung his fist at the sharp blade, and a large patch of golden light began to flash. Suddenly, a loud sound rang out in the sky, and streams of energy surged in the sky. Those Zephyr Realm cultivators who were full of pity and disdain were already waiting to see Zi Chen die. However, when they saw Zi Chen destroy the attack of an inner core cultivator with a single punch, they widened their eyes in disbelief. The inner core cultivator of the Overlord Force also raised his head in the next moment, looking at Zi Chen in the air in surprise. After destroying the opponent's attack with a single punch, Zi Chen did not have any injuries on his body. He was safe and sound. Which of the 5 overlords do you belong to? Zi Chen stood in the air, looking down at the inner core cultivator as he asked. This was a man in battle armor. At this moment, he was looking up at Zi Chen. When he heard Zi Chen's words, his pupils shrank. When they heard Zi Chen's question, the group of Zephyr Realm cultivators who were waiting for the core formation pavilion were even more stunned. As if sensing an unusual aura from Zi Chen's body, the other party stood up in the next moment. His originally playful expression turned serious in the next moment. Which of the 5 families do you belong to? Zi Chen's body emitted a faint golden light as he descended from the sky and asked coldly. The Shangguan family. The inner core cultivator looked directly at Zi Chen. Then, do you belong to Shangguan Feixiong or Shangguan Feilin? Zi Chen asked again, walking towards the Shangguan family cultivator step by step. The faint golden light around him also became brighter. Hearing this, the inner core cultivator's expression changed. He asked coldly, "Who are you? Why do you know about our Shangguan family?" Chapter 598. Zi Chen's luck had always been good. However, today, he seemed to be lacking something. From his opponent's constantly changing expression, Zi Chen had already guessed that he was one of Shangguan Feilin's men. He and Shangguan Feilin were already mortal enemies. Therefore, without saying anything, he turned into a golden light and rushed toward the mid-stage primal core cultivator of the Shangguan family. Boom! In the midst of an energy explosion, the two had already clashed once. This time, the power of both sides was almost the same. After the clash, both of them retreated. Seeing Yukong rushing to kill a mid-stage primal core cultivator, the crowd of Yukong who were waiting in line were all dumbfounded. However, what was even more unbelievable was that Yukong was able to block the attack of the mid-stage primal core cultivator. Boom! Boom! After the first clash, Zi Chen rushed forward again. The primal core cultivator fought back. The two of them attacked as fast as lightning. Each of their attacks carried a powerful force, shaking out waves of energy. The energy ripples spread out in all directions, causing the group of Imperial Sky cultivators to retreat in fear of being affected. The mysterious runes on the core formation pavilion also began to glow, circulating with a mysterious energy aura to resist the energy ripples. The entire stone plaza was filled with the sound of energy clashing. The two of them had clashed for dozens of times. After the last clash, they both retreated. Zi Chen's eyes were like lightning. He looked at his opponent coldly. The mid-stage primal core cultivator who was staring at Zi Chen also looked very serious. Although the previous clash was just a test and he did not use his full power, he could still feel the pure and terrifying energy in Yukong's body. He is even more powerful than Xiong'er. This was the comment the mid-stage primal core cultivator gave after fighting with Zi Chen for dozens of times. He still did not know that Shangguan Qixiang had already been killed by Zi Chen. Of course, he also did not know that Yukong had already offended the 5 dominating forces. Who are you? How dare you behave so arrogantly here? Don't you know where you are? Zi Chen's origin was unknown. The primal core cultivator could not figure out what was going on. Therefore, he asked. "I'm the one who wants your life," Zichen said. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he dashed forward again. His body emitted a resplendent golden light as the aura of ultimate energy surged from his body. He clenched his right hand into a fist and punched out. Tyrannical fist. With this punch, Zichen's aura immediately changed drastically. His body became tall and mighty, and extremely domineering. The golden fist light that left his body also broke through space and rushed towards the Dan Yuan. "Meech, a mere zephyr dares to speak such arrogant words." The strong cultivator in the middle stage of the primal core realm snorted coldly. Yukong's arrogance and decisiveness caused a murderous intent to surge out from his body. The energy in his core realm also began to surge wildly. Then, he struck out towards the golden light fist. Boom! Another rumbling sound was heard between heaven and earth. The space was torn apart by the vibrations of the energy, and pitch-black cracks began to spread. In this confrontation, Zichen was completely defeated. The golden light fist was directly scattered. At the same time, Zichen was also repelled by a surge of energy. In addition, this surge of energy also surged into Zichen's body, vibrating in his organs, trying to destroy Zichen's organs. However, it was blocked by Zichen's perfect body. The golden blood in Zichen's body continued to flow. Surges of inexplicable power emerged from within and rushed towards this surge of energy. Under the powerful perfect body, this destructive energy was completely destroyed. The second style of the tyrannical fist. As soon as the energy in his body was destroyed, Zichen clenched his fist again and rushed forward. The golden light of his fist once again shone in the sky. The dazzling light was dazzling. "You're actually fine after taking a hit from me." Feeling that the power of this punch was actually stronger than the previous one, the nascent core elite's expression changed slightly. His eyes flickered in an instant. The energy that he had sent into Yi Futian's body before was very powerful. Coupled with the enhancement of the unique technique of the Shangguan family, even an early-stage nascent core elite would die without a doubt, let alone a Yukong elite. However, such a powerful attack was actually easily blocked by Yi Futian. Yi Futian did not seem to be injured at all. Dan Yuan's eyes were filled with disbelief. Zichen's fist came quickly. The golden light was dazzling. Just as he was about to block it like before, he saw Zichen's fist suddenly stagger in the air. Then, the fist that was supposed to be one ray of light suddenly turned into hundreds of rays. Each ray of light was dazzling with golden light and emitted a terrifying aura. Bang! 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 Such a sudden change caused Dan Yuan's expression to change drastically. He was unable to effectively block it. Then, the golden light of the fist hit Dan Yuan's body like raindrops. Then, there was a loud explosion in the sky. Such an unguarded attack caused the mid-stage nascent core elite to be pushed back by the rays of light of the fist. Such a scene had completely stunned the crowd of Zephyr cultivators in the distance. In their world, an early-stage Jindan cultivator could casually slaughter a great perfection Zephyr cultivator, but the scene in front of them had far exceeded their scope of understanding. A late-stage Yukong elite, who was one level lower than them, not only blocked the attack of a mid-stage nascent core elite, but also sent him flying. Although this attack did not cause any substantial damage to his opponent, just being able to send him flying was already very impressive. "Kid, I want you dead." Being sent flying by a Yukong elite in front of everyone, the mid-stage nascent core elite felt humiliated and shouted angrily. The third move of the tyrannical fist. As soon as he gained the upper hand, without waiting for the nascent core elite to attack, Zichen shouted and used the third move of the tyrannical fist. This was also the last move of the incomplete manual of the tyrannical fist that Zichen had obtained. After so many years, he finally used it. When the tyrannical three styles appeared, the world was filled with endless golden light. It was dazzling. At this moment, everyone fell into a state of blindness because the whole world was filled with golden light. Other than the golden light, there was nothing else. And as Zichen's main target, the mid-stage nascent core elite felt a ruthless killing intent from this golden light. The golden light was filled with killing intent, but he could not see any substantial attack, nor could he see Zichen's figure. In addition, his spiritual sense could not detect any trace of his opponent. It was as if his opponent had disappeared into thin air, or he had turned into a ray of golden light. Suddenly, the mid-stage nascent core elite felt a dangerous aura coming from behind him. His expression changed. Light flashed under his feet, and his body instantly dodged to the side. Boom! In the midst of an earth-shattering sound, the golden world collapsed with a boom. Then, the golden world disappeared, and everyone's sight was restored. They all looked at the scene. Looking at the scene, everyone's expression became extremely shocked, and frightened. Yukong was standing in the air, high-spirited. His black robe was fluttering without wind, and his black hair was dancing wildly. Yukong was standing in the air, and there were no injuries on his body. Looking at the mid-stage nascent core elite, his body had already smashed into the corpse, lying there motionless. There was also a patch of red blood beside him. How is this possible? This is impossible. Am I seeing things? A mid-stage nascent core elite actually killed a mid-stage nascent core elite. The sound of people sucking in cold breaths could be heard from afar. Seeing the motionless mid-primal core stage cultivator, their hearts were already deeply shaken. When they looked at Zichen again, their gazes were filled with fear and respect. Killing a mid-stage nascent core elite as a mid-stage nascent core elite was no less than a miracle. Hee. Suddenly, a light laugh came from the ground. The mid-stage nascent core elite, who was lying motionless on the ground, suddenly moved his fingers. Then, his arms slid down, and he slowly propped himself up and stood up. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, and there was a ferocious smile on his face. A powerful aura began to surge around him. The group of nascent core elites were shocked because the nascent core elite stood up again. He was not dead, and judging from the aura on his body, he had only suffered some minor injuries. It was just that they were too excited and mistakenly thought that the nascent core elite had created a miracle. You are good. The nascent core elite looked up at Zichen. His eyes turned cold, filled with endless murderous intent. To be able to force me to this extent, you are very good. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, and the nascent core elite grinned. Every word was clear and powerful. Zichen looked down at him and replied coldly, "Actually, my original intention was to kill you." The two of them, one on top and one below, looked at each other with endless murderous intent. Kill me. HMPH, with your nascent core elite? The coldness in the nascent core elite's eyes turned into sarcasm, and the aura around him became even more terrifying. With him as the center, the space around him began to tremble and twist, like ripples on water. An even more terrifying energy was formed in the ripples. The energy in the nascent core elite's body seemed to have merged with the ripples in the air, causing his body to look very blurry, as if he was standing in a river full of ripples. His cold face suddenly turned calm, and his body disappeared in the next moment. Where he was standing, the space began to twist, forming a whirlpool. Ripples spread out in all directions with the whirlpool as the center. This was the Shangguan family's water ripples. It could be used for both offense and defense. Now that it was displayed by a mid-stage nascent core elite, it was much more powerful than Shangguan Qixing and Shangguan Bingxi. The other party had completely comprehended the essence of the cultivation technique, turning it into a true water ripple. Furthermore, the aura contained in it made Zichen feel danger. This dangerous aura made Zichen's pupils constrict involuntarily. Endless golden light began to shine from his body. At this moment, Zichen was like a blinding golden sun. In his body, golden blood began to flow, providing the perfect body with the strongest strength. In less than a breath's time, Zichen had already raised his battle prowess to the peak. Chapter 599. You dare to go against an essence core cultivator when you are merely in the air. Today, I will let you know that no matter how much of a genius you are, you will never be able to surpass an essence core cultivator. From the whirlpool formed by the ripples, the cold voice of a middle essence core cultivator could be heard. What if I am a monstrous genius? Zichen's body shone with golden light. His spirit had reached its peak, and he was ready to unleash his most powerful attack at any time. You will still die. As the cold voice faded, The primordial core cultivator manipulated the water-ripple-formed whirlpool and rushed towards Zichen. The vortex spun as it advanced, spreading out like a wave. It contained a destructive energy, and as the vortex expanded, it became even more terrifying. Before, the whirlpool was only 2 meters in size, but when it reached Zichen, it had expanded to several meters. At the same time, the destructive energy contained in the whirlpool was several times stronger than before. Die. Inside the whirlpool, the primordial core cultivator's eyes were full of ferocity. As he moved his spiritual thoughts, the whirlpool expanded to several meters in size and turned into a ghostly mouth, trying to devour Zichen. Such a strange and powerful whirlpool made Zichen's expression change instantly. From the whirlpool, he felt the threat of death. Once he was swallowed by the whirlpool, he would be severely injured even if he did not die. Therefore, when the whirlpool arrived, he let out a roar. His combat power had already reached its peak, and he could unleash his most powerful attack at any time. As for Zichen, his most powerful attack was naturally the attack with the help of his fingerbone. Therefore, he did not hesitate to use his fingerbone. Vroom! His right middle finger, which had fused with the fingerbone, trembled in the next moment. An aura that caused one's heart to palpitate emerged from it. Within this aura, there was also a vast pressure that swept through the heavens and earth, causing one to feel fear in their hearts. After that, Zichen raised his middle finger and pointed it at the center of the whirlpool with a powerful and terrifying energy. This was the most powerful confrontation, and also the attack that would determine the winner. Everyone in the Zephyr realm had already raised their heads and stared, holding their breaths. Boom! Zichen's middle finger instantly pointed at the vortex, triggering an earth-shattering explosion. An extremely terrifying energy, centered on the point of contact between the two attacks, began to spread to both sides. The void shattered under the force of this energy, and the stone platform began to tremble violently. A mysterious aura emanated from the entire core formation pavilion, which resisted the impact of the shockwaves. The power of the finger and the vortex continued to collide in the air. The powerful destructive energy that was contained within the two continued to spread. Shocking explosions continued to resound in the world. The group of core essence cultivators was already lying on the ground after the explosion. Their bodies were trembling as they looked at the sky in fear and shock. A great apocalypse was happening there. The destructive energy was constantly dispersing and the void was constantly shattering. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Within the vortex, seeing that Zichen had actually blocked his attack, his eyes were filled with disbelief. Then, a trace of anger and unwillingness emerged from the bottom of his heart. The energy in his body surged again, frantically pouring into the vortex. He wanted to use his powerful origin energy to forcefully destroy Zephyr Realm. Indeed, Zephyr Realm was Zephyr Realm after all. Even if he was a genius, it was an indisputable fact that he had very little energy in his body. After the core essence cultivator increased his strength, the vortex once again launched a powerful attack. The powerful energy contained in the opponent's finger was rapidly being depleted. Moreover, the horrifying aura of the fingerbone, which was originally extremely powerful and terrifying, was slowly being retracted. Seeing that his method was effective, the core essence cultivator's eyes were already filled with a sinister smile. He seemed to have already seen the scene of Zephyr Realm being killed by him after he ran out of energy. Very quickly, the terrifying power contained in Zichen's finger became weaker and weaker, until it finally dissipated. However, the vortex of the core essence cultivator still contained a powerful energy that was strong enough to destroy Zephyr Realm. The core essence cultivator could not help but laugh out loud. Haha, you are still Zephyr Realm after all. Even if you have powerful battle techniques, without the support of powerful origin energy, you will still die. Dan Yuan had a victorious smile on his face as he controlled the vortex to devour Zichen. This time, he seemed to be extremely confident. The frenzied destructive energy that was surging between heaven and earth had already dissipated after the void healed. Many Zephyrs also raised their heads to see the vortex devouring Zichen. Is the battle about to end? Is such a powerful Zephyr realm going to die just like that? The Zephyrs raised their heads and saw the vortex pressing down on Zichen. Their expressions became extremely complicated. Chen was also a Zephyr realm cultivator like them. However, the combat power that he displayed was tens or even hundreds of times stronger than theirs. However, they were not jealous. Instead, they were filled with admiration. At this moment, seeing that Chen was about to die in the hands of Dan Yuan, the Zephyrs were more or less disappointed. It is too early for you to be happy. Zephyr Realm's origin energy might not be as powerful as yours. Just as the vortex was about to press down on Chen and devour him, Chen's voice suddenly sounded from heaven and earth. Moreover, his tone was very calm. His face was filled with disdain, and the corner of his mouth was curled up into a cold smile. From his abdomen, another wave of extreme energy quickly surged out and flowed along his meridians to his finger bone. The power of the powerful finger had just dissipated, and a powerful and terrifying destructive aura that made one's heart palpitate emerged from it once again. What? Feeling the energy attack that was even stronger than before surging out from his opponent's fingertip once again, the smile on the core essence cultivator's face instantly froze. His eyes were filled with shock. Then, he saw that the vortex in front of him that could only destroy Zephyr Realm was easily broken apart by his opponent's powerful finger. The power of the powerful finger that pierced through the vortex was already present. After that, it pointed towards Dan Yuan's chest at lightning speed. Puff! A soft sound was heard in the next moment, and a blood arrow flew out from Dan Yuan's back. His chest had been pierced through by Chen's finger. At the same time, under a powerful force, Dan Yuan's body flew backwards. After flying backwards for a few hundred meters, he landed heavily on the stone platform, causing a loud bang and a large cloud of dust. In the battle between Zephyr Realm and Dan Yuan, it was actually Dan Yuan who was defeated. There was dead silence at the scene. Everyone in Zephyr Realm looked at Chen, who was in the air, extremely shocked. They looked at the tall figure that was emitting golden light like a god of war. At this moment, Chen was undoubtedly tall and mighty. Puff! However, the god of war was not invincible. In the previous energy attack, he was also affected by the extremely powerful energy shock, and he instantly vomited blood. However, what made everyone in Zephyr Realm even more shocked was that his blood was not ordinary red, but golden blood that was emitting a faint golden light. His chest was pierced, but for Dan Yuan, it was not a fatal injury. As long as Dan Yuan and his soul still existed in his body, he would not die. You think you can kill me like this? Dream on. Dan Yuan staggered to his feet, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He was only injured, and it was not a fatal injury. He still had the strength to fight. Chen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked down at his opponent. There was a hint of mockery in his cold eyes. If I can hurt you once, I can naturally hurt you a second time. There will be a time when you will suffer a fatal injury and lose your life. As soon as his voice fell, 2 drops of mid-grade yuan liquid appeared in Chen's hand. Immediately, the yuan liquid entered his mouth, and the energy in his body was instantly restored. All of this happened in a flash. After the energy was instantly replenished, Chen began to form seals. His fingers emitted a golden light, and seals appeared one after another. His fingers were extremely nimble, like little fairies. A seal quickly fell, and as the seal fell, Chen pointed his right middle finger again. Boom! As the finger was pointed, the sky trembled. A golden finger mark broke through the void and fell from the sky. Around the finger mark, there were terrifying electric snakes. This was the thunderbolt finger that borrowed the power of the finger bone. Its power was naturally far beyond other battle techniques, and the destructive power it contained was not any weaker than the previous finger attack. Seeing the golden finger mark, Dan Yuan's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly controlled the water ripples to resist. However, just as the water ripples formed a whirlpool, it was hit by the golden finger mark before it could expand. Bang! This time, the whirlpool did not even last for a breath of time before it was destroyed by the golden finger mark. Then, the finger mark fell, and once again pointed at Dan Yuan's chest. Almost 80% of the power of this finger attack had been consumed by the defensive light veils, and it did not pierce through the opponent's heart again. However, The remaining 20% of the attack still caused Dan Yuan to cough up blood and fly backwards. His chest had also become a bloody mess. If the previous attack was shocking for Zichen, then the appearance of the second golden finger mark made Zichen win decisively and beautifully. Dan Yuan flew backward, and his injuries worsened. His ferocious and angry face was filled with shock. However, when the golden finger mark appeared in the sky again, his face was filled with fear. Puff! The golden finger imprint descended and an endless amount of bloody light sprayed out. Dan Yuan's injuries worsened by a notch. Although he had already taken a drop of essence liquid to recover his energy, without a treasure pill to take, he could only recover his energy. He could not heal his injuries. Zichen stood in the air, his hands constantly forming seals. He controlled the thunderbolt finger to attack from afar. He no longer chose to fight in close combat. If he ran out of energy, he would continue to swallow liquefied yuan to recover. This was a pure competition of energy consumption. Although Dan Yuan could block the golden finger mark every time, he was injured every time. Although the injuries were light, there was a limit to light injuries, and that was serious injuries. As his injuries worsened, Dan Yuan knew that he could not defeat Zichen. He decisively decided to escape. Unfortunately, Zichen had extreme speed. He could not escape at all. Do you know who I am? He could not escape. As his injuries worsened, he could not fight. Helpless, Dan Yuan could only use his identity. However, Zichen did not care about him at all. He just kept forming seals, and then pointed his right middle finger at Dan Yuan. Again. Seeing Yi Futian pointing his middle finger at him again, and the terrifying golden finger mark falling from the sky, Dan Yuan's eyes were filled with despair and madness. His whole body began to glow. Then, a powerful aura emerged from his body. His eyes were wide open, and his face was filled with madness. He turned into a beam of light and flew towards Zichen. If we die together. Chapter 600. His Jindan essence burned, providing him with powerful energy. The aura around him also soared instantly. He was already heavily injured, but with the help of his burning Jindan essence, his speed was several times faster than when he was at his peak. His entire body turned into a ray of light. The other Yukongs were all scared out of their wits when they saw this scene. They naturally knew what was going to happen when the Jindan cultivator acted like this. He was going to explode his Jindan essence, and it was the Jindan essence of a mid-stage Jindan cultivator. Once he exploded, the entire stone platform, the entire core formation pavilion, and all of them would be swept away by the explosion and turned into nothingness. The faces of the group of people in the air changed as they screamed in fear. They displayed the fastest speed they had ever displayed in their lives as they frantically fled into the distance. Some of them even jumped off the stone peak and fell straight down. They would rather fall and be injured than die. At this moment, all the Yukongs were fleeing in panic, trying to save their own lives. No one was paying attention to the self-exploding Jindan cultivator, and naturally, no one had the time to pay attention to Zichen. Seeing the Jindan cultivator rushing towards him, Zichen did not show any panic on his face. Instead, he was very calm. The Jindan cultivator had a crazy and desperate smile on his face. After burning his Jindan essence, he increased his speed and directly rushed towards Zichen. He wanted to die together with him. At this moment, a silver light flashed behind Zichen, and the heavenly thunder wings appeared on his back. The two wings emitted a bright silver light, looking like a pair of wings of light. At the same time, a blood-red light surged in Zichen's hand. A bloody aura filled the air as a blood-red broken spear appeared in Zichen's hand. Zichen's body emitted a bright golden light as he held the blood-red broken spear and the heavenly thunder wings. He glanced coldly at the Jindan cultivator who was about to explode in the next breath. Then, he held the spear, spread his wings, and rushed forward. The three colors of gold, silver, and blood flashed as Zichen rushed towards the Jindan cultivator. The broken spear in his hand emitted a blood-red light as he pointed it at the Jindan cultivator. It was also at this moment that the Jindan cultivator witnessed the true meaning of extreme speed for the first time in his life. What was extreme speed? It was the extreme speed that had reached the limit. It was the first time a primal core cultivator had seen something like this in his entire life. This kind of speed had already exceeded his ability to think and react. He only saw a tricolored light rushing towards him, but before he could sense that something was wrong, he immediately thought of self-destructing, and the tricolored light had already disappeared from his sight. The inner core master did not know where the three-colored light went. The opponent's speed was too fast for him to grasp. He guessed that with such speed, the opponent must have run away. The other party had already fled, so this self-destruction was obviously meaningless. Thus, he decided to withdraw the energy of the self-destruction first. Although burning his Jindan essence would consume a lot of energy, and might even cause his cultivation level to drop, as long as he was alive, his cultivation level could still increase. However, before he could send out the thought to retract the self-destructing Jindan, he suddenly felt his body rising into the air. Moreover, this rising was uncontrollable. As he looked down, he saw a headless body that was glowing all over in the void below. Fresh blood was spurting out from the neck, but the body was still charging forward in the air. Vaguely, the Dan primary cultivator felt that this figure was very familiar. However, before he could recall where he had seen this person before, his vision turned black and he lost all consciousness. Peng! The headless body flew forward for 100 meters, and the light around it began to fade. The body began to fall diagonally, and finally, it fell on the stone platform, making a dull thud. When the dull thud was heard, everyone in the Yukong subconsciously laid on the ground, hugging their heads, and curling their bodies as much as possible so that they would suffer less from the destructive force. Zi Chen stood in the air, holding the broken spear in his hand. He looked at the pathetic state of the Yukong, and then his gaze fell on the corpse of the Dan primary cultivator. The Yukong waited for a long time, but they did not see the destructive scene that they had imagined. They were all stunned, and then they looked around carefully. The sky was still the same sky, and the stone platform was still the same. It was flat and smooth, and nothing had changed. The destructive force did not appear for a long time, so the Yukong cultivators were a little braver. They raised their heads and looked at the sky. However, the sky was empty. There was no trace of the Yukong cultivator, and there was no Dan primary cultivator who self-destructed. Where is he? The Yukong cultivators were confused, and they looked around. Then, they heard footsteps from afar. As they turned their heads, they saw the powerful Yukong cultivator land on the ground. Yukong landed on the ground, bent down, and reached out his hand as if he was trying to pick something up. Wait, what is that? A headless body? Oh my god, that is the body of an Dan primary cultivator. He actually chopped off the head of a mid-stage Dan primary cultivator. The mid-stage Dan primary cultivator did not self-destruct successfully, and his head was chopped off in advance. The Yukong cultivators were all stunned. They looked at Yukong in front of them in disbelief. However, after seeing him take away the spirit ring of the Dan primary cultivator and the Dan primary cultivator's body, they could not help but believe that it was the truth. Yukong had really chopped off a mid-stage Dan primary cultivator. After accepting this fact, the Yukong cultivators were filled with endless regret and regret. This was a miracle, a moment that they had witnessed a historical miracle. They only cared about running away, and did not see it with their own eyes. Why was I distracted just now, and did not see it? Oh my god, such a miracle, I did not see it with my own eyes. Damn it, why did I not take a look at it before? The Yukong cultivators were extremely frustrated. However, as the only witness, the Yukong cultivator in the core formation pavilion was also extremely frustrated. Such a huge commotion had naturally awakened him. Even though his eyes were opened to the limit, and he was fully focused on this battle, he still did not see anything other than the three-colored light. He only saw the three-colored light flash, and the head of the Dan primary cultivator flew up, and the corpse fell down. After Zi Chen took away the spirit ring and the Dan primary energy of the mid-stage Dan primary cultivator, a figure appeared in the sky. It was the early-stage Dan primary cultivator who brought Zi Chen here earlier. He flew over from afar. He only knew that Zi Chen had killed the enemy when he saw the head flying off the stone platform. Even though he was extremely shocked, he still decided to go forward. Big Lord! The early-stage Dan primary cultivator bowed to Chen respectfully. His voice was still trembling. Especially when he saw the headless body, his eyelids twitched. Chen nodded, then turned around and looked at the Yukon cultivators. Big Lord. The Yukon cultivators also bowed, trembling. They did not dare to look at Chen directly. Being able to kill a Dan primary cultivator was enough for them to respectfully call him Big Lord. Clang. Chen raised his hand and shot out a ray of light. When the light fell to the ground, it had already turned into weapons and stabbed into the stone platform. These were all elixir weapons, and there were 20 of them. Feeling the aura of the elixir weapons, the Yukon cultivators were very confused. They did not understand why this big lord would take out so many elixir weapons after killing the enemy. Because of the terrifying battle strength Chen had displayed, no one dared to show the slightest bit of greed in their eyes at this moment. 20 of you go in and form your elixir. Once your elixir is formed, follow me, and the elixir weapons will be yours, Chen said indifferently. Ah! The Yukon cultivators were stunned. They looked up at Chen in shock. Forming the Dan primary cultivator and receiving elixir weapons? How could there be such a good thing in this world? The Yukon cultivators turned their heads and saw that the others had the same expression as them. They could not help but believe that there was such a good thing in this world. My time is limited. What are you waiting for? Seeing that the others were indifferent, Chen's eyes suddenly turned cold. After that, the Yukon cultivators came to a realization and rushed towards Chen. The core formation pavilion was opposite of Chen, but the Yukon cultivators were rushing towards him in panic. This made Chen frown slightly. Soon, he knew what they wanted to do. It turned out that they wanted to give him the 100,000 low-grade primordial stones needed to form his core. Previously, the primordial stones were collected by the mid-level Dan cultivators. Now that they were dead, they naturally had to give them to Chen. Chen laughed involuntarily and said, "You don't have to give me the primordial stones. My time is limited. You should form your core quickly. In the future, I will pay you 10,000 high-grade primordial stones every year." Chen's calm words caused all the Zephyrs to be stunned, and then they all stopped. However, when they understood the meaning behind Chen's words, all the Zephyrs widened their eyes in disbelief. Many of them were instantly dumbfounded. But of course, there were also some who were quick-witted. Without another word, they turned around and flew towards the core formation pavilion. The sound of the wind breaking woke the others up. In a moment, the crowd realized what was going on. Almost 100 Yukon cultivators turned around and rushed towards the core formation pavilion. There is already one here. You guys just need 19 more. The Yukon cultivators in the core formation pavilion naturally heard what Chen said. He was already in the pavilion and felt very lucky. But when he saw 100 Yukon cultivators rushing towards him, he was also shocked. He hurriedly shouted at the crowd. But right now, the Yukon cultivators were only thinking about Dan weapons and high-grade primordial stones. Why would they care about that? Halfway through, they started to pull each other and even showed signs of fighting. And after they rushed into the core formation pavilion, they started to push and shove each other, trying to push the others out. The first wave will take 20 people. As for the others, after they form their cores, they can come find me. The treatment will be the same. Chen frowned and said again. Hearing this, the Yukon cultivators stopped pushing and shoving. After a short moment of silence, some of them consciously retreated. Soon, there were only 20 Yukon cultivators left in the packed core formation pavilion. The core formation pavilion was very big. It was big enough for 20 Yukon cultivators to break through at the same time. Previously, the Yukon cultivators only allowed the Yukon cultivators to break through one by one. They didn't want the Bedlam lands to have so many Yukon cultivators enter at once. In the Bedlam lands, Yukon cultivators died almost every day. So, as long as the Yukon cultivators were able to keep up with the number of deaths, it would be fine. Helping 20 Yukon cultivators avoid the lightning tribulations at the same time seemed to be strenuous in the core formation pavilion. The mysterious runes that never glowed before began to glow for the second time today. Waves of mysterious aura circulated and formed a light shield that enveloped the core formation pavilion. Chapter 601. After successfully killing a mid-stage primordial core cultivator, Chen occupied the core formation pavilion. After a few days, 20 primordial core cultivators would walk out from there. At the same time, Heifeng and Wild Wolf brought Longhu to visit various forces in the outer regions. Other than Longhu occasionally striking to intimidate, as more and more primordial core cultivators followed behind them, in the end, when the number exceeded 30, there was no need to intimidate anymore. The group of primordial core cultivators gave the other party two choices: live or die. In just 3 days, the group traveled to all the regions within a radius of 1,000,000 miles. They visited dozens of forces, big and small, and brought back close to 50 primordial core cultivators. Among them, there were 8 who went through the lightning trial on their own. With endless resources, coupled with powerful and overbearing strength, Chen quickly recruited a large group of primordial core cultivators. Although the loyalty of these cultivators remained to be tested, they seemed to be able to make up the numbers and gang up on him. Just as Wild Wolf and Heifeng returned with a group of cultivators, the monk, who was recruiting outside the market, also recruited many primordial core cultivators. However, compared to 10 days ago, the monk was much more comfortable now. He was half lying on the chair in the most comfortable position. Primordial core cultivators served him tea and water. On his left, there was a table filled with vegetarian pastries. His days could be said to be perfect. However, not far ahead, there were pieces of bloody flesh on the ground. The ground was stained red by fresh blood. Such a scene was like heaven being next to hell. It gave people a strong sense of contradiction. The demonic ape's intimidation in the market was naturally not enough to scare all the primordial core cultivators. This was a chaotic place without any rules. The monk displayed his elixir weapon, primordial core cultivators, and a large number of upper-grade primordial stones. Moreover, he was in the Zephyr realm. This was a complete show to the world that he had no strength, but he was very rich. This was a real fat sheep. No one would not be tempted. Therefore, after the demonic ape killed 6 primordial core cultivators with its black rod, there were still greedy primordial core cultivators who were unwilling to give up. It was a very famous force in the central region. The leader was a cultivator who was at the peak of the early stage primordial core cultivator and had an elixir weapon. He led more than 10 primordial core cultivators in the force and made a name for himself in just 2 years. When he heard that there was a fat sheep outside the market, he led a group of primordial core cultivators and came aggressively. In that battle, the monk was lying down and watching the show. Zhong Haotian was cold and upright like an outsider. As for the devil ape, who had been assigned as a hired thug, he wielded a black stick and single-handedly defeated more than 10 primordial core cultivators. As for the primordial core cultivators who wielded elixir weapons, they only managed to block one more stick strike. Was primordial core cultivator was killed primordial core cultivator attack was killed primordial cultivators was pridal core was core cultivator. Primordial core cultivators core cultivator. Were killed primordial core cultivators end were core was. Were all dead pridal core cultivator formation cultivators at this point. There was no longer any Dan Essence stage cultivator who dared to be greedy and have any ideas about these flying cultivators. Moreover, as time passed, news about them also came from the inner region. Not only did these barbarians offend the 8 forces, they also offended the other forces in the inner region. They even offended the overlord forces. When they returned from the inner region to the outer region, they plundered many mineral veins and resources. It could be said that they were filthy rich. When the news spread, it instantly caused an uproar. While they were shocked by the audacity of the barbarians, they finally understood why they were willing to pay such a high price to recruit primordial core cultivators. It turned out that they wanted to fight against the overlord forces. This was a bold and crazy move. The overlord forces had been standing tall for thousands of years. They had a deep foundation. After they made a name for themselves, they became an existence that no one dared to provoke. But now, a group of barbarians had angered the overlord forces. When the Xian barbarians challenged the overlord forces, they had almost no chance of winning. But the high price offered by the barbarians made many crazy and bold primordial core cultivators willing to give up their lives for this huge amount of wealth. Therefore, the number of elixir weapons in front of the monk decreased. The number of primordial core cultivators following behind him also increased. As the saying goes, people die for wealth, and birds die for food. They were all crazy gamblers, but what they were betting on was their lives. You have been standing there for more than 10 days. Why? Don't you want to join in? The monk's gaze fell on a young man in the distance. This was a slightly chubby young man with small eyes and a head full of unconventional short hair. He had been standing there since the first day of the monk's recruitment. Although there were many people like him in the past 10 days, and there were quite a few of them, they were all flying in the air. There was only one of them in the past 10 days who had not spoken a word even after a core expert had looked at him for a long time. As soon as the monk opened his mouth, everyone's gaze fell on the young man. The chubby young man's expression changed slightly. In the past 10 days, he had not revealed his primordial core strength. He did not expect that the monk would still sense it. After concealing his primordial core aura, this was an inconspicuous young man. As he stood up, he was still an inconspicuous butterball. It was only when his primordial core aura surged out that he became unusual. Don't you want to go crazy for these benefits? The monk stood up slightly and looked at him with a smile. The chubby young man was obviously a little tempted, but his expression changed, as if he was not confident enough. Then, he shook his head at the monk. The monk could clearly see the reluctance in the young man's eyes, but he refused. The monk was very surprised and asked, "Why? Do you think the rewards are too low? We can discuss it." This was the first time in more than 10 days that the monk had talked to someone about the rewards. The young man was very tempted, but after hesitating for a moment, he said, "It's not about the rewards." The other party was just a young man. He did not look old, but he was still a young man. However, when he spoke at this moment, his voice sounded very young, like the voice of a pure child. "Then what is the reason?" the monk asked curiously. The other primordial core cultivators also looked at the young man. The young man thought about it seriously and decided to tell the truth. He took a deep breath and said, "It's because of me. I can't participate in a battle of attrition. I can't even participate in a battle of more than 2 breaths." "Oh, why?" The monk was even more curious. A primordial core cultivator could not participate in a battle of attrition, and a battle of more than 2 breaths. This was really strange. "Because the energy in my body is only enough for me to make 3 attacks, the young man said with a childish voice. The monk was only flying, so he did not know how much energy there was in a primordial core cultivator's body. However, he could imagine that once he successfully broke through to the primordial core level, the rich energy in his body would be able to make all this energy in just 3 short attacks. This was definitely not something an ordinary primordial core cultivator could do. After the young man finished speaking, he looked at the monk nervously. It was because of this reason that he had been observing for more than 10 days and did not go forward to ask. "What kind of 3 attacks are they? Can you demonstrate it for me?" the monk asked curiously. "Demonstrate?" The young man was stunned. "Yes, demonstrate it on me. I want to feel the attack power of your 3 attacks." The monk nodded. "I can demonstrate it on you, but you are only flying." The young man was obviously stunned again. When the others heard this, they also looked at the monk in surprise. For more than 10 days, the monk was only in charge of recruiting people and had never fought. Everyone only knew about the powerful primordial demon ape, but they did not know about the hated baldy in the deep region. The primordial demon ape is also flying. What do you think of him? The monk did not answer the young man's question. "Very strong." The young man nodded sincerely. The primordial demon ape's combat power was terrifying. Just flying was enough to kill so many primordial core cultivators. The young man was very impressed. "That's right. I am stronger than him." The monk smiled. As soon as the monk finished speaking, there was a sound of cold air being sucked in, followed by a series of boos. The primordial demon ape could kill more than 10 primordial core cultivators in an instant with the black stick in his hand. The monk said that he was stronger than the primordial demon ape. Naturally, no one believed him. Even Zhong Haotian, who was standing straight, looked at the monk again. He could not help but be impressed that the monk's skin was getting thicker. At this moment, hearing the monk say that he was stronger than the primordial demon ape, Zhong Haotian did not doubt that if Zi Chen was here, he would also point at Zi Chen and say, "Look, is he strong or not? I am stronger than him." Naturally, no one believed the monk's words. The young man did not believe it either. However, the monk did not care. He revealed a smile that said, "You don't understand me," and said, "Come, let me see your combat power." The young man could not refuse the monk's serious look. Therefore, a light flashed in the young man's hand, and a long saber appeared. As soon as the long saber appeared, it attracted another round of boos. This was because it was a spirit weapon. In the past 10 days, they had seen the monk give out dozens of elixir weapons. Therefore, there was no room for spirit weapons in their eyes. "I have elixir weapons here. You can choose one." The young man shook his head and said, "No need. I only know how to use sabers." With the spirit saber in hand, the opponent's aura changed instantly. His slightly plump body seemed to be filled with endless power in the next moment. Moreover, his originally calm eyes became incomparably sharp. In an instant, Tyrant felt as though he had met an evenly matched opponent. Furthermore, he could even sense a dangerous aura from the other party. Wang. The monk's senses were naturally sharp. The opponent only knew 3 strikes, so it was obviously not an ordinary 3 strikes. Therefore, he put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. The Buddhist divine body protection technique had already appeared. A golden light shield instantly enveloped the monk's body. On the light shield, there were golden runes circulating. An old monk was chanting scriptures. Occasionally, the sound of chanting could be heard. The monk's expression became very serious. Beside the wooden tablet, Zhong Haotian's eyes also became sharp. At this moment, the young man made his first strike. He held the saber, swung it, and slashed at the monk. The ordinary long saber actually emitted a powerful and destructive aura in the next moment. Chapter 602. The monk's protective light shield was able to withstand the attack of a mid-stage primal core expert. However, with just one attack, the shield was distorted by the young man's spiritual weapon. The monk's expression changed instantly. However, since it was called the strongest light shield, it naturally represented a strong defensive power. Although the golden light shield was distorted, it still managed to block the opponent's powerful attack. After the first attack, the young man's gaze became even sharper. His essence, chi, and spirit rose to the peak once again. He roared and exerted strength in his wrist. Then, he slashed the second time. The spiritual weapon instantly shone brightly. A chilling aura surged from the tip of the blade. The blade slashed the light shield at an extremely fast speed. The surging energy began to surge. The light shield on the monk's body was also heavily slashed by the blade. Then, the light shield started to distort crazily. The destructive energy was surging violently. Kaka. Cracks appeared on the entire light shield. Just as the light shield was about to shatter, the energy contained in the long blade seemed to have run out of energy. In the end, it was the strongest defense that was able to block the attack. Furthermore, after the destruction energy on the long blade dissipated, the cracks on the golden light barrier instantly healed. Swoosh. After the second attack was exhausted, the golden light shield recovered once again. The young man's expression did not change. He immediately withdrew his blade and swung it for the third attack. Under this attack, the energy in the young man's body was like a flood that suddenly broke through the dam. It crazily surged towards the spiritual weapon in the opponent's hand. Other than the remaining yuanli in his body, the young man's spiritual sense also surged towards the long blade. This was an attack that was truly infused with his essence, chi, and spirit. It contained an extremely terrifying energy. Amitabha. Seeing that the opponent's last attack was so strange, the monk put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha solemnly. The monk usually did not act like a monk. However, when he acted like a monk, he was the most serious. After the chant, The pure golden Buddhist energy in the monk's body continuously surged out from his jindan and gathered towards the golden light shield. Feeling the terrifying energy contained in this attack, the monk also used all his strength. His strongest defense was instantly pushed to the limit. The dazzling blade in the young man's hand slashed down. It was like a rainbow light piercing through the sky, attracting everyone's attention. Seeing this attack, the crowd was either shocked, amazed, or overwhelmed. When the numerous Dan Yuan experts felt the powerful energy contained in this attack, their expressions changed drastically. Under Zhong Haotian's indifferent expression, there was also a hint of surprise. Everyone's eyes were fixed on this blade. Then, they personally witnessed this bright and dazzling blade light slashing towards the golden light barrier. Bang! A deafening sound reverberated throughout the heavens and earth. Everyone was dumbstruck. Sigh, I failed again. A disappointed sigh sounded. Looking at the remaining hilt in his hand, the young man let out an unwilling sigh and threw away the hilt in his hand in anger. Before his powerful attack from before could even land on the golden light barrier, the spirit weapon was the first to be unable to withstand the energy and shattered. Just how powerful was that strike? Why was it that even a spirit weapon couldn't withstand it? The crowd of shocked cultivators were also puzzled. At this moment, the powerful energy in the young man's body receded like a tide. His spirit also became sluggish in the next moment. His body even staggered and almost fell to the ground. After 3 attacks, the young man seemed to have suffered a fatal injury. Not only did his spirit become sluggish, but he also did not have an ounce of strength in his body. In an instant, he turned from a powerful Dan Yuan expert to a person who could not even truss a chicken. At this moment, even a true energy realm miner could kill the young man. Such a huge contrast from before and after caused the crowd of cultivators to change their expressions again. This was obviously the reason why the young man said that he could not fight for long. The golden light shield around the monk had already disappeared. He held the young man who was about to fall. At this moment, the young man's face was extremely pale, as if he was suffering from a serious illness. However, the young man's eyes were fixed on the monk. In an extremely weak voice, he asked, Can I do it?" After saying that, the young man's face was filled with anticipation and hope. The monk did not speak, and the surrounding cultivators were also silent. For them, this was a difficult question to answer. They had paid a sky-high price to hire a guy who could only make 3 attacks. Before the 3 attacks, the young man was a king. But after the 3 attacks, he was like a dead man who needed others to take care of him. The young man looked at the surrounding cultivators, as if he had found the answer from their faces. His pale face suddenly became gloomy, and the arm that was held by the monk could not help but tremble. "Yes, of course you can," the monk said at this moment. "What?" The young man's pale face suddenly flushed red. His originally gloomy expression was filled with disbelief. "Try swallowing this." The monk did not repeat himself. Instead, he took out a drop of yuan liquid. This was a mid-grade yuan liquid. 1 drop could restore all the energy in the body. Moreover, it was priceless. Back in the auction house, it was sold for 30,000 upper-grade yuan stones per drop. Seeing the monk take out a drop of yuan liquid, the crowd gasped. This was obviously telling the young man that not only could he stay, he could also be of great use. The young man naturally recognized the yuan liquid. This was a real high-grade item. Just 1 drop alone could be exchanged for 3 elixir weapons. However, he did not even have a single elixir weapon on him. "Try swallowing it and see if the energy in your body can be restored," the monk said again, very calmly. Swallowing a drop of the priceless yuan liquid just to verify one thing, the crowd was once again shocked by the monk's generosity. There was a touch of emotion in the young man's eyes, but he shook his head and said, "No need. I can recover on my own in a few days. It's better to keep this thing to save my life. The real life-saving thing is the elixir. The yuan liquid is just a consumable. Try it quickly," the monk said again, motioning the young man to swallow the yuan liquid. The young man refused, and swallowed it in 1 gulp. Immediately, the energy in his body was restored in the next moment. Although his spirit was still weak, It was no longer a problem for him to stand steadily. The young man's energy was restored, but his combat strength was not. A drop of yuan liquid was wasted in vain. Everyone felt it was a pity. Unexpectedly, the monk was very satisfied after seeing the young man's appearance. He nodded repeatedly and said, "Good, very good. In the future, when you fight, you can strike 3 times with lightning speed, then take the yuan liquid and take the opportunity to retreat." The monk's words made the faces of the alchemy experts change again. Obviously, the monk wanted the young man to take a drop of yuan liquid after every attack. One should know that this was yuan liquid. It was expensive and was used by others to save their lives at critical moments. However, in the monk's mouth, it was no different from cabbages that could be seen everywhere. "So, you are willing to accept me?" The young man was also shocked by the monk's generosity. He asked excitedly, "Of course you can stay, but it's hard to decide your treatment. When I go back, I have to discuss it with my other defeated opponent." The monk nodded and boasted shamelessly, "As long as you are willing to accept me, I don't want the reward. But can you give me an elixir weapon?" The young man said excitedly, "What kind of elixir weapon do you want?" The monk asked. "A blade. I like to use a blade, and I only know how to use a blade." This was a small request. The monk had already given out dozens of elixir weapons, so he didn't care about one. Unexpectedly, after hearing the young man's words and seeing his almost fanatical expression, the monk frowned slightly. After thinking for a moment, he said, "I don't have any elixir weapons at the moment. When we go back, I will find you a suitable one. Your situation is a bit special, so it's best not to fight unless it's necessary. Here are 2 drops of yuan liquid, take them first and run if things go wrong." He didn't give him an elixir weapon, but gave him 2 drops of yuan liquid. Including the previous drop, it was a total of 3 drops. If exchanged for yuan stones, it would be 90,000 high-grade yuan stones. The monk generously gave away 90,000 high-grade yuan stones as soon as they met. Such wealth made people speechless. However, more alchemy experts saw the light of hope from the young man. The monk was so good to a useless waste, so he naturally wouldn't be bad to these alchemy experts. At this moment, they were very optimistic about their prospects and future. "By the way, I still don't know your name," the monk suddenly asked, which made them even more speechless. He didn't even know the young man's name, but he gave him something worth 90,000 high-grade yuan stones. "I'm Zhong Tong." Zhong Tong carefully put away the 2 drops of yuan liquid that made him feel incomparably heavy. The yuan liquid was actually not heavy, but the heavy thing was trust. "You're from the same family." The monk glanced at Zhong Haotian and smiled. Zhong Haotian also nodded at Zhong Tong in a friendly manner. With this scene, everyone completely saw the monk's foundation. The real good thing on him wasn't elixir weapons or yuan stones, but yuan liquid. Therefore, more alchemy experts asked to join the monk's team. During this period, even if the monk repeatedly emphasized that he didn't have any more elixir weapons, the group of alchemy experts said that it didn't matter. Therefore, the number of alchemy experts behind the monk expanded again. When the devil ape flew over from the horizon, the monk had already recruited more than 50 alchemy experts. This was a very frightening number. "We should meet up with Zi Chen. They have already caught up with us. They are from the 8 major forces," the devil ape said straightforwardly. With the arrival of the pursuers, the recruitment naturally came to an end. However, before leaving, the monk shouted at the Zephyrs, "Go and tell the other alchemy experts that if they want to join us, go to the outer region. We welcome them at any time." After that, the monk led the group of alchemy experts to the outer region to meet up with Zi Chen. Outside the core formation pavilion, the first wave of 20 Zephyrs had successfully broken through to the alchemy realm. Chapter 603. 3 days later, Wild Wolf returned with a group of Dan origin stage cultivators. Zi Chen had been delayed for a long time, so he did not return on time. Since they had not seen their master after such a long time, and Wang Qiong and the rest were only flying in the air, they could not control the situation. This caused some of the Dan origin stage cultivators to complain. However, with Longhu guarding the place, the situation did not get out of control. However, the number of people who came to Wild Wolf and Haifeng every day increased. They were trying to find out who the master of Longhu was and how powerful he was. The two could only say that he was horribly powerful. 2 days later, Zichen still had not returned. The group of core essence realm cultivators appeared somewhat impatient, resulting in some friction with Wang Qiong and the others. As for the cause of the friction, it was naturally a small matter that could not be any smaller. What should we do? On the 6th day, the conflict started again. A Dan origin stage cultivator came to report the situation to the two. Wild Wolf looked at Haifeng, waiting for him to make a decision. Haifeng's character was calm and steady, and when he heard the reason for the conflict, he was silent for a moment before he finally said, Zichen has not returned for a long time, and they are unable to meet the person in question. Since they were forcefully recruited, they naturally have some complaints in their hearts. They are deliberately looking for trouble. Wild Wolf's eyes flashed. He waved his hand, signaling the Dan origin stage cultivators to leave first. After they left, Wild Wolf looked at Haifeng and said, Zichen has not returned yet. Will something happen to him? You have to know that he is dealing with the mid-stage Dan origin stage cultivators of the Overlord forces. If something happens to Zichen, these people will vent their anger on us. Haifeng smiled and said without a care, Zichen has not returned yet. The ones who should be worried the most are not us. Look at Zichen's friends. They do not seem to be worried about him at all. And that woman, she is Zichen's confidant. She is not worried about Zichen at all. She should be very confident in Zichen. Hearing this, the Wild Wolf was enlightened. He secretly praised Haifeng for his sharp observation. Thinking about it carefully, it seemed to be true. However, he was still confused. He asked, does Zichen really have the power to kill a mid-stage core realm warrior? I'm not sure about that either. It's just that for someone at the late stage of the Imperial Sky Realm to kill someone at the mid-stage of the Inner Core Realm, even for a Sky Warrior, I'm afraid it would be extremely difficult. I think Zichen should have some kind of trump card. Wild Wolf nodded and stopped thinking about this problem. However, the friction between Dan Yuan and Zichen's friends had not been resolved yet. As if he could read Wild Wolf's mind, Haifeng said, although Zichen's friends are all in the flight realm, since Zichen was able to leave them here without worry, none of them are easy to deal with. Let's put this aside for now. Let's wait for Zichen to come back and settle the conflicts. Just as the two were talking, the sound of quarreling came from outside again. The sound was getting louder and louder, and the quarrel was getting more and more intense. Dan Yuan, who had just left, soon came back in. Wild Wolf asked what was going on, and the other side said respectfully, it was a Dan Yuan who had a quarrel with Wang Shan. He said that the other side was only in the flight realm, but he didn't know his place and dared to speak rudely to Dan Yuan. He said that he wanted to teach this ignorant flight realm warrior a lesson. What? Teach him a lesson? The two's expressions changed instantly. Yes, it's about to happen. Damn it. Don't they know that Wang Shan is a friend of Master Zichen? How dare he teach Master's friend a lesson? Does he want to die? Wild Wolf's face darkened. The two rushed out of the door. The two of them were so concerned not because they were loyal to Zichen, but because they were afraid that this matter would cause Zichen to be displeased and blame them. At that time, they would be implicated. After all, they were waiting for Zichen to return so that he could help them break through. The Bedlam lands only believe in strength. The strong are respected. You're just a mere flight realm warrior. Even if you're Master's friend, so what? Moreover, I haven't even seen Master's face. I haven't even considered joining. When Wild Wolf and Haifeng came out, they happened to hear such a voice. The two's expressions immediately changed. More than 50 primal core cultivators had already formed a large circle and were looking at the center of the field with mocking expressions. There, Wang Shan was being reprimanded by a primal core cultivator. Wang Qiong and the others were beside Wang Shan. Behind primal core cultivators were 2 primal core cultivators. Facing a mere early Dan Yuan cultivator, Wang Shan naturally wasn't afraid. With a mocking expression, he said, "You came without considering joining? Are you an idiot?" Dan Yuan's expression immediately changed, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. At this moment, he felt that the greatest humiliation in his life was being scolded by Flight Realm Warrior. "You're courting death." Killing intent flashed in Dan Yuan's eyes. "Idiot, you're the one courting death. You're the one courting death." Wang Shan was still fearless. Auras surged around the two, and the atmosphere became abnormally tense. In the distance, a group of Dan Yuan cultivators looked at this scene with mocking expressions, enjoying the show. "Enough, what are you doing?" Suddenly, a cold voice sounded. The crowd parted, and Wild Wolf and Heifeng walked in with gloomy faces. "What happened?" Heifeng asked with a sullen face. "It's this reckless Flight Realm Warrior. Relying on the fact that his master's friend who hasn't even met him, he dared to speak rudely to me." Dan Yuan was still somewhat afraid of Heifeng. He explained, but his tone was filled with anger towards Wang Shan. Heifeng looked at Wang Shan, who shrugged and said, "It's this idiot who's causing trouble for no reason. Listen, he still dares to speak rudely to me. No, I must teach him a lesson today." Dan Yuan was thoroughly enraged. Wang Shan only smiled coldly at Dan Yuan. Heifeng frowned and said coldly, "All right, Master will be back soon. We'll talk about who's right and who's wrong when he returns." As soon as Heifeng finished speaking, a voice rang out in the distance. "Heifeng, you're in the wrong here. It's just a small quarrel. Do we have to wait for Master to return? Both of them want to fight. Why don't we fulfill their wish?" The one who spoke was the leader of the original group. At this moment, his face was full of ridicule. "Heifeng, you're too nervous. Although Milord's friend is only flying, he must have extraordinary strength to be able to follow Milord. It shouldn't be a problem for him to surpass his level and suppress a Dan Prime," another Dan Prime said. "That's right. We should let them fight. Not only in the Land of Chaos, but also in the entire Tianwu continent. A mere Flight Realm cultivator dares to insult a Dan Yuan. Naturally, he has the confidence to do so. Moreover, this kind of conflict should be on the battlefield instead of simply looking for Master that we've never met." Gradually, voices came from the crowd. These people were not afraid of Wild Wolf and Heifeng. Before the two recruited them, they already felt that these people were unstable factors. As expected, Chen still hadn't returned, and they couldn't sit still anymore. Moreover, Heifeng suspected that this quarrel was instigated by them. The group of Dan Yuan who were not afraid of the two spoke one after another, saying that they wanted to watch a fight. They even said that the dignity of a powerhouse was earned through fighting. As for the Dan Yuan who had seen Longhu's strength, although they didn't join in the commotion, they chose to remain silent. There were more than 50 Dan Yuan in the crowd, but only a few supported the two. Seeing that the situation was about to go out of control, the two could only look at Longhu for help. The two wanted Longhu to attack again and intimidate them. However, they found that Longhu had no intention to attack at all. He seemed to be enjoying the show. "Heifeng, what are you hesitating for? In a world where the strong are respected, all dignity is earned through fighting." The group of Dan Yuan raised their voices a lot. Obviously, they were pressuring them. Beads of sweat appeared on the foreheads of the two, and they couldn't control the situation. However, the two understood that this fight couldn't happen no matter what. Otherwise, Chen would definitely blame them when he returned. Just as the two were helpless, a voice that was like the sound of nature to them suddenly sounded. "Heifeng, Wild Wolf, what's going on? Why is everyone gathered here?" This was Chen's doubtful voice, but to the two of them, it was more pleasing to the ears than any sound of nature in the world. Furthermore, the two of them, who had felt immense pressure just a moment ago, also felt incomparably relaxed when they heard this voice. The two of them quickly turned their heads and put on the most respectful posture. They watched as Chen walked out from the crowd, and then greeted him respectfully, "Sir." Chen nodded at the two of them. His gaze swept around and fell on the Dan Yuan people. "Not bad. You actually managed to recruit more than 50 people. Thank you for the praise, sir." The two of them said respectfully again. Chen nodded again, and then his gaze fell on the two of them. "These are the things I promised you before. Take them now and quickly break through." Chen took out a Dan Yuan in his left hand, and a mid-grade liquefied yuan liquid floated in his right. As soon as these two things appeared, the excitement in the eyes of Wild Wolf and Hafen grew stronger. As for the surrounding Dan Yuan people, their eyes were wide open. Both of these things were extremely expensive, and they couldn't buy them even if they sold their entire family's fortune. The two of them thanked Zi Chen gratefully and hurriedly took the things in his hand. Then, they carefully put them away and flashed behind Zi Chen, standing respectfully. There's not much time left. Go and break through now. Zi Chen waved his hand, indicating that the two of them should leave. The two of them nodded and then turned to leave. Obviously, there was nothing left for them to do here. It wasn't until the two of them disappeared into the building below that Zi Chen's gaze fell on the center of the scene. He asked faintly, "What's going on here?" Wang Shan shrugged helplessly and said, "They saw that you didn't come back for a long time and became a little impatient. So, they started to attack me, a little Zephyr." Wang Shan's words were very straightforward, which made the faces of the Dan Yuan people change, but they didn't deny it. Because Zi Chen, who came from the sky, also showed that he was in the Zephyr realm. His strength was even weaker than Wang Shan's, who was close to the peak of the Zephyr realm. Such a person was their lord, and such a person could give them a sky-high reward. Perhaps it was true. Because what Zi Chen gave Wild Wolf and Hafen just now was a sky-high price among sky-high prices. But why wait for someone to give them a reward? Why not fight for it? Chapter 604. Many Danyuan experts' expressions had changed, but not all of them. Obviously, there were still some who were more rational. Among the group of Danyuan experts, there were also some who recognized Zi Chen. They could tell at a glance that this was Yu Kong, the one who had been hunted down by them because of yuan liquid. But at that time, dozens of Danyuan experts had failed to kill him, and he had entered the ancient battlefield in the end. "You are Lord, and you are also Yu Kong." Dan Yuan, who had a conflict with Wang Shan, turned his head and looked at Zi Chen, a trace of disdain flashing in his eyes. Zi Chen was not angry at being looked down upon. Instead, he turned and looked at the group of Dan Yuan experts, saying, "My name is Zi Chen, and I am the leader of this team. Since everyone has chosen to join us, we will be on the same side in the future. I will also promise to give everyone the rewards you deserve." After Zi Chen finished speaking, there were no cheers or applause from the crowd. Instead, there were a few disdainful chuckles. The rewards, we agreed at the beginning, 1 dun weapon and 100,000 upper-grade yuan stones. Dan Yuan looked at Zi Chen and asked again. "That's right." Zi Chen nodded. Hearing this, Dan Yuan laughed strangely and said in a sarcastic tone, "At the beginning, we agreed to give you the Dan weapon, but in the end, you said that there was no more Dan weapon, and that it was not enough. You said that you would give me the Dan weapon when we returned. Now that you are back, shouldn't you give me the Dan weapon?" Dan Yuan asked rudely. It sounded like a question, a demand. In the crowd, all the Dan Yuan experts looked at Zi Chen, and there were a few who already had contempt on their faces. 1 Dan weapon, of course I can give it to you." Zi Chen was not angry. He just smiled and said, "In my opinion, you should have other requests, right? Why don't you say them all together? I will see if they are reasonable. If they are, then we will solve them all together." "Haha, you have good eyesight, to be able to guess that I have other requests. Not bad, you have the potential to be a leader." Dan Yuan laughed and then said loudly, "Listen to me. In addition to the elixir weapon I promised before, I want to add another 200,000 high-grade primordial stones to the annual reward of 100,000 high-grade primordial stones, which is 300,000 high-grade primordial stones per year. 300,000 high-grade primordial stones a year, this was no doubt an exorbitant demand. Dan Yuan became extremely excited, but suddenly changed his mind. "No, not every year, every month. Pay me 300,000 high-grade primordial stones a month. In addition, give me the same amount of primordial liquid you just gave Haifeng. 300,000 high-grade primordial stones a month, plus a lump of mid-grade primordial liquid. Do you know how much those things are worth?" Zi Chen asked calmly. "I don't care how much you have. If you want me to work for you, then you have to pay me back," Dan Yuan said loudly and proudly. The surrounding Dan essences who were watching the commotion looked at the scene with different expressions. Among them, there were some who were puzzled, some who were mocking, and some who were sympathetic. Dan Yuan's words could be said to be very arrogant, and his conditions were incomparably harsh. This was simply an exorbitant demand. Even the onlookers couldn't bear such an outrageous demand. However, as the leader's friend, Wang Shan, who was incomparably arrogant before, now looked indifferent, as if this matter had nothing to do with him. In addition, Zichen's other friends also didn't show any extreme emotions on their faces. Their calm expressions made many Dan Yuan puzzled. At this time, Dan Yuan's attitude became worse. If you want me to work for you, you have to agree to this payment, and you have to pay me 1 month's worth in advance. Now, take out the primordial stones and pill weapon for this month. As he gazed at Dan Yuan's increasingly ugly face, a cold glint appeared in Zichen's calm eyes for the first time. His voice had also become much colder. Your demands are too high and I am unable to fulfill them. I might as well not force you to join my group. What? Dan Yuan was angry when he heard this, and shouted at Zichen, now you say you won't force me to leave, then what have you been doing before? You called me here and wasted my time. How are you going to calculate my losses? No, you have to compensate me. Zichen shook his head, and said, I think you are mistaken. I won't force you to join my team, but I also didn't say you can leave. You can't afford to hire me, but you won't let me leave. What do you mean? Are you going to treat me like a lord? Dan Yuan began to laugh loudly, his eyes full of contempt. However, only his laughter echoed in the air. It was very lonely. As for the other core essence cultivators around him, for some reason, none of them laughed. It was as if Zichen's performance had always been far too calm. When Wild Wolf and Black Wind came to find you, they should have given you 2 choices, right? Zichen asked calmly. T, he only gave me 1 choice, and that was to join your team and work for you, or else. Dan Yuan's words suddenly stopped, and he suddenly remembered what 2 choices were, and at that time, Black Wind did give them 2 choices. 1 to live, 1 to die. Dan Yuan's expression changed, and in an instant, he already knew what Zichen meant. He asked coldly, what, are you going to kill me? Zichen shook his head, and said, wrong, I want to send you on your way. After saying this, Zichen took a step forward, and as if he had teleported, he was in front of Dan Yuan in an instant, very close to him. Such a strange speed scared Dan Yuan, and he hurriedly took a step back, increasing the distance between him and Zichen. At the same time, he shouted, and a terrifying energy began to surge in his Dan Yuan, and then he suddenly attacked Zichen. Seeing Dan Yuan attack first, Zichen's face was still calm, and his eyes were also very calm. After that, he stretched out his right hand and pointed with his right finger, meeting the opponent's attack. His fingertip emitted a golden light, and then a frightening aura emerged. After that, his right finger rushed forward and pointed at Dan Yuan's attack. Dan Yuan's attack was made with a fist, and the whole fist was emitting a bright light, and Dan Yuan's aura emerged. However, Zichen's finger fell, and in an instant, the fist light was scattered, and at the same time, his finger pointed at the opponent's exposed right fist. After that, a frightening aura gushed out from his middle finger, spreading out like layers of ripples. These ripples spread out, and caused a shock. Dan Yuan's right fist, along with his whole right arm, was instantly turned into powder and disappeared under this shock. He did not even feel the slightest bit of pain, and his whole right arm suddenly turned into powder and disappeared. Dan Yuan's eyes were already filled with horror. His mouth was wide open, and it was not clear whether he was begging for mercy or asking for help. However, before he could make a sound, Zichen's middle finger continued to move forward, and with the same energy from before, pointed at his heart. Buzz! The frightening energy ripples spread out from Dan Yuan's chest, and his body, like his right arm, turned into powder and disappeared under the shock of the energy. When Zichen withdrew his finger, Dan Yuan's figure was no longer in the sky. There was only a spirit ring and an energy Dan Yuan floating quietly in the air. With one attack, a Dan Yuan's primordial spirit was completely destroyed. Such combat power made the surroundings suddenly become deathly silent, and the eyes of all the Dan Yuan cultivators became filled with shock. With just one attack, they already understood that there was a reason why Yi Lang and He Feng were willing to follow Zichen and use proper methods to obtain resources and wealth from Zichen. They did not want to steal from him because they were stupid. On the contrary, they were far too smart, and they knew how terrifying Zichen's combat power was. The Dan Yuan cultivators who had seen Longhu fight before and knew how powerful he was, and had not participated in this matter. Apart from being shocked, they also heaved a sigh of relief inside. Zichen had completely intimidated everyone by killing the arrogant Dan Yuan. None of the Dan Yuan cultivators dared to feel discontent anymore. However, just this alone was clearly not enough for Zichen. As a result, Zichen's calm eyes swept across the Dan Yuan cultivators once more. The Dan Yuan cultivators naturally did not dare to meet Zichen's eyes. When Zichen's gaze swept across them, they all lowered their heads. Zichen's gaze finally landed on one of the Dan Yuan cultivators. This was the Dan Yuan cultivator who had previously declared that the strong were respected, and that their dignity would be decided in a single battle. Apart from jeering and refuting He Feng, he had also played a key role in fanning the flames when Zichen arrived. Dan Yuan's 300,000 high-grade yuan stones per year had suddenly risen to 300,000 every month, all thanks to him. Zichen stepped in the air and slowly walked towards the other party. He said indifferently, "I'll give you a chance to attack." The other party raised his head. His eyes were filled with panic, and his voice was also filled with extreme panic. "Great sir, what is it? Since you won't attack, I will." Zichen had already arrived in front of the other party. "Die!" The panicked Dan Yuan's face suddenly turned sinister, before he launched a powerful and domineering attack at Zichen. But Zichen's response was only to point out a finger. Then, the other party's fate was the same as the previous Dan Yuan. His body was shaken by the energy ripples and turned into dust. Although his strength was much stronger than the previous Dan Yuan, the two of them still ended up in the same situation. In the blink of an eye, a true expert had been killed. The Dan Yuan cultivators were all shocked. Their gazes all fell on Zichen. They were incomparably shocked, and some of the more timid ones had already begun to tremble. Under their shocked gazes, they saw Zichen turn around again and walk towards another Dan Yuan cultivator. This was the leader of a force, and his strength was very strong, comparable to He Feng. "Didn't you want a ball of yuan liquid like them? I'll give you a chance to attack." Zichen looked at the other party calmly. His calm voice sounded like he was chatting with someone. "Great sir, you misunderstood. The panic in Dan Yuan's heart had risen to the extreme. While he was shocked by Zichen's strength, he was even more afraid of his unchanging calm expression. He was almost scared to tears. "Oh, so it was a misunderstanding." Zichen's voice was still calm. Just when Dan Yuan thought Zichen was going to say that since it was a misunderstanding, Zichen said, "Since it was a misunderstanding, then please leave my team." There was only one outcome for leaving the team, and that was death. Dan Yuan's eyes were already filled with despair. Then, he saw Zichen point out a finger and send him on his way. Chapter 605. After killing 3 primal core cultivators with 3 fingers, the remaining primal core cultivators were so frightened that they did not even dare to breathe loudly. Such a method of intimidation was the true embodiment of the Tianwu continent's rule of respecting the strong. The combat power of the dead primal core cultivators represented the 3 levels of early primal core cultivators: ordinary, strong, and peak. The first person was disrespectful to Zichen and deserved to die. However, the last 2 clearly felt fear in their hearts and wanted to submit, but Zichen still killed them decisively. Such a decisive way of doing things was to tell the other primal core cultivators that although Zichen needed primal core cultivators to fight, he did not need just any primal core cultivator. "My name is Zichen, the leader of this group. Since everyone has chosen to join, then we will be on the same side in the future. I will also promise to give everyone the rewards they deserve." After tossing all the spirit rings and primal core cultivators to Wang Shan, Zichen turned around and spoke calmly to the group of primal core cultivators. From the moment he appeared until now, his expression had always been so calm. "Milord. Lord Zichen. It was the same sentence he had said when he arrived. Now that he said it, it caused thunderous cheers. Aside from the lack of applause, the cheers surged like waves. The difference between before and after was like heaven and earth. Zichen waved his hand, and the primal core cultivators stopped cheering. They looked at Zichen with more or less a trace of fear in their eyes. He is called Wang Qiong. He can give orders on behalf of me. In the future, his words are my words. Zichen pointed at Wang Qiong, and the latter stepped forward. The primal core cultivators called out in unison, Lord Wang Qiong. Wang Qiong nodded as a greeting. Zichen then pointed at Wang Shan and said, he is called Wang Shan. If any of you do not have a primal core weapon, ask him for one. In the future, he will be in charge of this. After Zichen spoke, Wang Shan strode forward with his head held high and his chest puffed out, his expression proud. Lord Wang Shan. The primal core cultivators called out in unison. Haha, not bad, not bad. Wang Shan looked at the primal core cultivators with satisfaction. Then, he said, it's just that your voices are too soft. Come, let's do it again. Because of Zichen's previous deterrence, the Dan essence cultivators were like little sheep at this moment. Naturally, they didn't dare to resist, and so they loudly called out, Lord Wang Shan. Lord Wang Shan. That's a pretty good title. Haha, I'll introduce you to a Lord Bald Donkey next time. Wang Shan laughed. Currently, Zichen's faction could only be considered a team. Before the first battle, there wouldn't be any important arrangements. Thus, after a simple introduction, the group was disbanded and everyone was free to move about. However, the prerequisite was that they could not leave this place for more than 10,000 miles. The 20 Dan Yuan experts that Zichen had brought with him also stayed behind. More than 70 nascent core experts gathered together and got to know each other. When these nascent core experts found out that Zichen had single-handedly killed the nascent core experts guarding the core formation pavilion, their hearts were filled with shock. On one hand, they were shocked by Zichen's powerful battle prowess. On the other hand, they were in awe of Zichen's boldness. He even dared to provoke an overlord faction. Although Wild Wolf was a demonic beast, ever since he could transform into human form, he had many human habits. His residence was also very big. Other than himself, there were other Dan essence cultivators and Yukong cultivators living here. Zichen and the others temporarily stayed here before they built their own base. It's been almost a month. The pursuers will be here soon. We have to plan how to defend against the first wave of attack. Early in the morning, Wang Qiong found Zichen to discuss this matter. When the monk comes back, we'll plan again. If we have a lot of Dan essence cultivators, then we'll just flatten them. Zichen poured a cup of water for Wang Qiong. Wang Qiong nodded and said, the first wave of attack should be the weakest. We should be able to defend against it. Before the second wave of attack comes, we have about a month of rest. During this time, we can choose to expand our territory or create our own faction. Oh right, have you thought about the name of the faction? I haven't thought of a name yet. Zichen shook his head. We have a lot of resources now, and we have occupied the core formation pavilion. This means that we have an endless supply of Dan essence. We can definitely form an army. As for Yukong, if we recruit him now, we can instantly recruit thousands of cultivators. With our resources, we might be able to do something earth-shattering. So we have to think of a good name for the faction so that it can be passed down through the ages, Wang Qiong said excitedly. Zichen nodded. A faction did need a name, but he wasn't as excited as Wang Qiong. He wasn't that ambitious to create a great faction that could be passed down through the ages. His current thoughts were more simple, and that was to first defend against the Overlord faction's attack. LV Peng hasn't returned yet. Zichen asked. No, he, Elder Mo, and the spirit-devouring rats have been looking for a suitable place to set up the formation, Wang Qiong said. The Overlord faction was the super overlord of the Bedlam lands. Zichen wanted to defend against them with just a few dozen primal core experts. That was simply a dream. His greatest reliance, other than his ultimate trump card, the old turtle, was Elder Mo's formation. As the most mysterious formation master, Elder Mo had once said that if he was given enough resources, materials, and time to set up the formation, he could turn the entire Chaos City into ruins in a single day. He could make the 5 Overlord factions disappear from the chaotic battlefield in a single day. Hence, to defend against the Overlord faction, they still needed a formation. But before that, they had to choose a good location to set up the formation. 3 days passed quickly. Suddenly, 2 powerful auras appeared in Wild Wolf's residence. These were the auras of mid-primal core experts. When they sensed these powerful auras, the nearby primal core experts' expressions changed. "Haha, we finally broke through." Wild Wolf and Black Wind's loud laughter rang out in the next moment. After breaking through to mid-primal core, the 2 of them had become the true experts of the Bedlam lands. Even in the inner regions, there were many forces willing to recruit them. When the 2 of them broke through, Zichen's eyes flashed with joy. Clearly, with 2 more mid-primal core experts on their side, it would be much easier to deal with the first wave of attacks. Zichen and Wang Qiong walked out of the room one after the other. Wang Shan and the others also appeared at the first moment. By the time they arrived at Wild Wolf's residence, the other primal core experts had already arrived. They were congratulating the 2 of them with unconcealable envy in their eyes. Wild Wolf and Black Wind also laughed in response. The 2 of them were feeling very good after breaking through. But when they saw Zichen arrive, the 2 of them withdrew their smiles and respectfully bowed to Zichen before thanking him. "Many thanks for your help, Lord." Zichen waved his hand. "You're welcome. This is also the reason why you've been training so hard and reached a bottleneck." Seeing Wild Wolf and Black Wind being so respectful to Zichen, the other primal core experts' expressions changed slightly. They had heard that Zichen had killed a mid-primal core expert from an overlord force and knew that Zichen was very powerful. Now that Wild Wolf and Black Wind had broken through at the same time, they were equivalent to 2 mid-primal core experts. Now that they were facing Zichen, who was in the airborne realm, they should have some thoughts about him. However, the 2 of them were still so respectful to Zichen after breaking through. This caused everyone to be shocked by Zichen's strength. Everyone understood that the reason why the 2 of them were still so polite after breaking through was not because they were grateful, but because they were afraid. Clearly, Zichen still had the strength that made the 2 of them wary. The group of primal core experts was about to leave after congratulating, and Wild Wolf and Black Wind did not ask them to stay. It was obvious that Zichen had something to say to them. Suddenly, a figure flew over from the horizon and shouted from very far away, "Lord Zichen, it's bad. I've discovered an army of Dan primary realm cultivators flying in our direction." A primal core army. The primal core experts who had not left changed their expressions. They had known that there would be a battle in the near future, but they did not expect the other party to come so quickly. Zichen's expression also changed when he heard this. Seeing that Zichen was silent, Wild Wolf, who had just broken through, was in a good mood and volunteered, "How many people are there? How dare they come to the outer region and behave so atrociously? We'll go and kill them immediately." "That's right, my strength has just broken through. I also want to test my strength." Black Wind also nodded. Then, he looked at the other primal core experts and asked, "Who is willing to go with us to kill the enemy?" Zichen was here, so the group of primal core experts naturally did not dare to decline. They all expressed their willingness to go and kill the enemy immediately. "Kill the enemy, Wild Wolf, Black Wind, look at how aggressive you are. Who do you want to kill?" Another voice suddenly came from the horizon. Then, a golden figure flew over quickly. Wild Wolf and Black Wind, who had reached the middle stage of Primal Core, were furious when they were called directly by their names. However, they suddenly felt that this voice was very familiar. After seeing the figure in the golden light, they knew who it was. "It's that bald donkey. He's not dead." The two's expressions immediately turned ugly. "Oh, I haven't seen you for a long time, and you've broken through. Not bad, not bad. You can barely exchange a few moves with Lord Zeng with the strength of a middle-stage primal core expert. It's really lonely to be lonely." After sensing the aura of the two, the monk's slightly excited voice came from the golden light. The other primal core experts did not know what was going on. They all looked at the incoming golden light in surprise. This was because they realized that Yukong was also in the golden light. Yukong dared to be so arrogant, even more arrogant than Zichen. This was the first time they had seen someone like him. The golden light arrived in the blink of an eye. Such speed made the group of primal core experts' expressions change slightly. However, after that, they saw an extremely shocking scene. An object appeared in Yukong's hand, and a dazzling golden light shot out. The golden light fell and hit Wild Wolf instantly. With a loud bang, Wild Wolf, who had just broken through to the middle stage of primal core, was sent flying. Wild Wolf was sent flying with one hit. Such a shocking scene made the group of primal core experts' eyes almost pop out. But then, Yukong attacked again. Large amounts of golden light scattered, and pure Buddhist power began to surge. With another loud bang, the golden light enveloped Black Wind. The latter was also sent flying without any suspense. Chapter 606. The golden light receded and the monk appeared. He held the demon subduing pestle in his hand. He looked up at the sky and sighed. Sigh, it's really lonely to be a master. The monk's appearance was so infuriating. At this moment, everyone had the urge to slap his face with the soles of their shoes. However, when they saw Wild Wolf and Heifeng being sent flying, this urge was suppressed in the bottom of their hearts. The two who were in a good mood because of their breakthrough had lost their confidence after being beaten by the monk. Their mood was ruined. They pulled long faces and flew over from afar. How many people did you bring back? Zichen looked up at the monk. More than 50. The monk lowered his head and looked at Zichen. The demon subduing pestle in his hand flashed. His expression changed, as if he wanted to attack. Zichen nodded and looked at him calmly. The monk finally gave up on attacking Zichen. At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air came from the horizon. It was the devil ape and Zhong Haotian returning with the other inner core cultivators. More than 100 inner core cultivators. This is really a big deal. After all the inner core cultivators arrived, Wang Shan sighed as he looked at the densely packed inner core cultivators. The others nodded, their faces filled with excitement. More than 100 inner core cultivators gathered, all of them surging with inner core aura. The scene was spectacular. As the leader, Zichen said a few words in the air. After that, Zichen asked in front of all the inner core cultivators, "Who are the people who came this time?" "They are from the 8 forces. 48 inner core cultivators. 8 of them are mid-stage inner core cultivators, and the rest are early-stage inner core cultivators," the monk said directly, not deliberately hiding anything. When the primal core experts in the crowd heard this number, they sucked in a breath of cold air. Especially the 8 mid-stage primal core experts, they were incomparably shocked. It should be known that on their side, there were only 2 mid-stage primal core experts. Zichen nodded. 48 inner core cultivators. This number was still manageable. He then asked, "How long will it take for them to arrive?" 3 days at most. There were less than 3 days before the first battle. Time was of the essence. Therefore, Zichen ordered everyone to prepare for battle. Apart from that, those who did not have pill weapons were all given pill weapons. At the same time, everyone was given a drop of mid-grade liquefied origin energy. A single drop of mid-grade origin liquid was worth 30,000 high-grade origin stones, which was equivalent to several months of their salary. This was obviously an extra gift. Everyone sighed in amazement at how generous this was, and at the same time, their hearts were filled with gratitude towards Zichen. After distributing the liquefied essence, the crowd dispersed. Tyrant led a youth towards Zichen's residence. "Look at the talents I've brought back this time," Tyrant boasted when he saw Zichen. Zichen looked up at the young man. He was slightly plump, had small eyes, and had short hair. He asked with interest, "Talent?" "Of course, a genius among geniuses," the monk emphasized. Then, he turned his head to look at the young man and said, "Zhong Tong, demonstrate it for me." "Now," Zhong Tong asked in a childish voice. The monk nodded and then looked at Zichen, saying, "Don't be careless. His attack power is very strong." Apparently, the monk had already informed him of this matter before he came. Zhong Tong instantly took out a long saber that was at the level of an elixir weapon. His right hand gripped the saber's hilt tightly, and the aura around him instantly changed. Swoosh! The sharp saber slashed down in an instant, surging with a terrifying aura. Chen frowned slightly and raised his hand to block. Golden light flashed between his palms. Boom! A shocking sound came from the room. A surge of energy swept within a 1-meter radius around the two of them. Although the two of them controlled the range of the energy well, they were unable to suppress the sound. Such a loud sound made the crowd of Elixir Core Realm cultivators rush out, nervously asking what happened. It's just an ordinary spar. It's nothing serious. Everyone, go back. The monk's voice came from the room. Chen had already introduced the monk to everyone, and they had also seen the scene of the monk repelling the wild wolf and black wind. Knowing that the monk was on their side, they left one after another. Just as they turned around, an even stronger explosion came from the room. It was deafening, but the crowd of Elixir Core Realm cultivators did not stay. They turned around and left. In the room, Chen took Zhong Tong's second attack and took 3 steps back. There was a hint of surprise on his calm face. As soon as the second attack fell, the third attack came. Chen could clearly feel a terrifying energy gushing out from the elixir weapon. This energy was not pure yuanli, but there was also a powerful soul power in it. This attack could be said to be the attack that Zhong Tong's spirit had reached its peak. As the saber slashed down, the space began to distort and tremble. The destructive aura rippled, and the dazzling saber light illuminated the entire room. Such a powerful attack caused Chen's expression to change slightly. However, he was not afraid. He lifted his hand and pointed out a finger. The power of his finger bone was activated, and a heart-palpitating aura was emitted from Chen's finger. Boom! The finger bone and the saber collided, and there was an explosion. The violent energy went beyond the range of the two of them and spread out in all directions. The entire room was the first to be unable to withstand the vibrations of this energy and collapsed with a loud bang. Smoke and dust flew everywhere, and as more energy spread out, the room next to Chen's also began to crumble. With such a huge commotion, the Elixir Core Realm cultivators naturally could not sit by and do nothing. So, they appeared again. Then, they saw Chen block the saber in the hand of an Elixir Core Realm cultivator with a single finger. The Elixir Core Realm cultivators in the outer area were surprised. They wondered why Chen would want to spar with an Elixir Core Realm cultivator. However, the Elixir Core Realm cultivators who came with the monk were all shocked when they saw Chen block Zhong Tong's third attack with a single finger. They had seen the power of Zhong Tong's 3 attacks with their own eyes that day. Moreover, the terrifying energy contained in the third attack had directly shattered the spirit weapon. However, Chen had blocked 3 attacks with the elixir weapon. This was simply unbelievable. What do you think? The monk supported Zhong Tong and showed off to Chen. Seeing that Zhong Tong had become extremely weak after 3 attacks, Chen nodded and said, "He is indeed very strong, but he must have used some kind of secret technique. It seems like he can only attack 3 times, but at the critical moment, even 1 attack would be enough, let alone 3 attacks. He is indeed a genius. If you know, then why don't you take out the elixir of treasure?" The monk said. Chen naturally did not have an elixir of treasure on him, but he had the ancient herb king, which was comparable to an elixir of treasure. So, Chen took out the ancient herb king, plucked a leaf, and let Zhong Tong eat it. The latter was a little flattered, but before he could refuse, the monk forced it into his mouth. Then, the energy in Zhong Tong's body was restored in the next moment. Zhong Tong, who had been dispirited before, also became energetic at this time, but he was far from recovering to his peak. This was because the vitality of the ancient herb king could not be compared to an elixir of treasure. It was very effective in recovering injuries and energy, but it was obviously a little weak in recovering soul power. Seeing an existence comparable to an elixir of treasure disappear just like that, the surrounding elixir masters showed a pained expression. Using an elixir of treasure without any reason was simply a great waste. However, the monk did not think so. Instead, he was very proud. "How is it? My eyesight is very good, right? 1 elixir of treasure in exchange for 3 attacks. It is very worthwhile. The monk's words made the other elixir masters have the urge to bang their heads against a wall. A elixir of treasure was worth millions of upper-grade primordial stones, and it was only exchanged for 3 attacks. This was simply a waste to the extent of committing a sin. On average, 1 attack would cost millions of primordial stones. This was not bad. How was it not bad? 1,000,000 primordial stones for 1 attack. With such a sky-high price, one could hire a late elixir master to fight for them. Sure enough, Zichen shook his head when he heard this. This made the elixir masters feel a lot better, thinking that their leader was more reliable. However, after Zichen shook his head, he said, using an elixir of treasure is not bad, but the effect is not very strong. You should try a mid-grade primordial liquid and a spirit recovery elixir. The effect should be better than an elixir of treasure. That's right. After 3 attacks, he only consumed a lot of energy, but he was not injured. He only needs to recover his energy. It is useless to have such a huge amount of vitality. I actually did not understand such a simple principle. The monk suddenly slapped his forehead. The elixir of treasure is with King Mountain. Go to King Mountain and ask for it. The monk nodded, but did not immediately. Instead, he stretched out his hand to Zichen. What? Zichen looked at the monk. Take out the bone knife on your body. Zhong Tong is very good with knives. The bone knife will be more useful in his hands. The monk directly asked for it. The bone knife was obtained by Zichen in the ancient battlefield. It was a product of a king ancient beast. As for its power, it was like the sword tooth of the saber-tooth devil leopard. Under the condition that it was not refined, it had a sharpness and toughness that far surpassed ordinary elixir weapons. The value of such a bone knife was naturally extraordinary. Moreover, it was a product of a king ancient beast. Its value was probably higher than an elixir of treasure. However, Zichen did not hesitate at all and directly took out the bone knife. The bone knife was as white as jade. On its surface, there were natural patterns formed by the body of an ancient beast. They crisscrossed like some kind of heavenly pattern. At first glance, it was obvious that it was not an ordinary item. Moreover, the bone knife was unusually sharp. When the bone knife was taken out, the surrounding elixir masters were all stunned. The sound of inhaling cold air was heard continuously. Moreover, there was obvious envy on their faces. Zhong Tong looked at the bone knife in front of him in shock. He even forgot to take it. It was only after the monk reminded him that he came back to his senses. After taking the bone knife, Zhong Tong thanked him repeatedly. His face was full of excitement and excitement. Obviously, he was very satisfied with the bone knife. Just kill more enemies. Zichen only smiled as the other party kept thanking him. In the blink of an eye, he gave the other party a bone knife and consumed an elixir of treasure. Such treatment made the elixir masters very jealous. Since this place had collapsed, it was naturally not suitable for people to live in. Zichen and the others could only leave and go to other rooms. During this time, Zichen also gave a few stronger elixir masters an elixir each. He also hinted that they must be careful when facing the enemy. Such generous trust made the elixir masters feel very grateful. They secretly swore that they would do their best to work for their master. As for Wild Wolf and Haifeng, who were the first to enjoy the benefits, they had long planned to follow Zichen. The speed of the pursuers was faster than the monk imagined. In just 2 days, the devil ape reported that it had found traces of elixir masters. Chapter 607. It's finally here. Zichen, who had made all the preparations, was calm after hearing the devil ape's report. The real battle with the major forces of the Bedlam lands would begin today. Would the barbarians win and create a major force that could shake the Bedlam lands, or would they fall under the siege of the core essence experts of the other forces? Today would be the day that the curtains would be drawn. More than 100 core essence experts had all appeared and stood behind Zichen. Killing intent surged around them. After enjoying such a great treatment, they naturally had to give it their all in the battle. Soon, a terrifying aura surged from the horizon. Many core essence experts of the 8 forces had already appeared. Chen and his group stood in the air without concealing their presence. A group of alchemy primordial realm experts flew over with killing intent. However, when they saw the hundreds of alchemy primordial realm experts behind Chen, they were stunned. How long had it been? It had only been a month, but the barbarians had already recruited a team of core essence experts. Such a speed also shocked the core essence experts of the 8 forces. However, they were only shocked. There was no fear on their faces. Because with their powerful senses, they already knew what kind of people these core essence experts were. Among the 100 core essence experts, more than 90% of them were products of the core formation pavilion. Even though there were many of them, they were still ordinary. In terms of combat power, even if the other side had 100 core essence experts, they were still very weak. Barbarians, how dare you offend the 8 forces? Today will be the day you die. The core essence experts of the 8 forces stopped 1,000 meters away. One of them shouted. This was the opening speech. I even dare to offend the overlord forces, let alone you 8 small forces. Chen snorted coldly in response. At the same time, Chen transmitted a message to the others. This is our first battle. We must win beautifully and shockingly. 8 mid-stage core essence experts. Me, Monk, Longhu, Zhong Haotian, the Devil Ape, Hei Feng, and Yi Lang will each block one. Wang Qiong and the others will hold back the remaining one. Zhong Tong will be responsible for killing him. As for the other 40 early-stage core essence experts, you all go up and beat them up. Chen quickly made arrangements. At this moment, the battle was imminent. Even though the core essence experts were confused, they did not dare to ask too much. Both sides did not exchange any unnecessary words. With a loud shout, an intense battle broke out. Kill. Amidst the heaven-shaking battle cries, a group of core essence cultivators charged together, and the sound of weapons clashing rang out continuously. At the same time, Chen sent a voice transmission to Dan Yuan, who was engaged in a fierce battle, pull away quickly, in case Dan Yuan self-destructs. The Dan Yuan team quickly separated and rushed towards the horizon. There was a large distance between each other. Behind Chen, Black Wind's expression changed. He seemed to have something to say, but in the end, he didn't say anything. The Dan essences in the midst of battle quickly left, leaving only a few black dots on the horizon. Chen's arrangement could indeed prevent the Dan essences from self-detonating and prevent large-scale casualties, but this had to be established on the basis of loyalty and trust. If those core essence cultivators took the pill weapons, essence elixir, and essence stones, then they would leave and fight far away. After that, it was very likely that they would flee with everything because they were afraid of death. In order to boost their morale, Chen had given each of them 10,000 upper-grade primordial stones in advance before the battle. The purpose of this was to make them work harder and more loyal during the battle. However, when their lives were in danger, Chen's encouragement would have the opposite effect. In an instant, casualties appeared in the battle on the horizon. The ones who died were naturally the Dan essences on Chen's side. With such a huge gap in strength, if the Dan essences did not cooperate well, they would be in danger of dying. The trash you recruited will all die. As for you, I will take your heads and hang them high on the city gate tower of Chaos City. A mid-stage Dan essences sneered. Kill. Chen replied coldly. Then, he turned into a beam of golden light and rushed towards the mid-stage Dan essences who spoke. Kill. Kill. After that, a series of battle cries rang out. Tyrant and the others also rushed forward, each looking for their own target. You're really courting death. How dare you fight against us when you're merely in the Zephyr realm? There was a hint of disdain in the eyes of the Dan essences on the opposite side. Then, they charged towards the Zephyr realm cultivators. The battle was about to start. Then, they scattered, retreated, and increased the distance between them. The one fighting Chen was a strong cultivator from the Gong family. He had been in the mid-stage Dan essences for dozens of years. His battle strength could be said to be very strong. The Dan weapon in his hand shone brightly. With a powerful aura, he smashed it towards Chen. This smash was full of power. The space twisted and shattered, and a terrifying aura swept out. Clang! But then, a blood-red light flashed, carrying a monstrous murderous aura. It blocked the attack. A sonorous sound rang out in the sky. Dazzling sparks flew everywhere. In the eyes of the Dan essences, it was just flying, but it blocked the attack. What? The Dan essence's expression changed. His face was full of disbelief. The Dan weapon in his hand trembled again, and he smashed it towards Zichen. In Zichen's hand, the blood-red broken spear trembled. The blood-red light flashed, and it blocked the attack again. After that, a series of sonorous sounds rang out. The two of them exchanged blows faster and faster. In the end, they turned into two beams of light, chasing each other and exchanging blows. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged dozens of blows. Neither of them had the upper hand. After attacking for a long time without success, the Dan essences could not help but feel impatient. Obviously, this scene was very different from what he had imagined. Before coming, he had thought of all kinds of ways to trample on these barbarians. Before each of these methods, the barbarians would be taken down in one move. But in the situation before him, not to mention being taken down in one move, he could not even suppress them. Everything was evenly matched. Another powerful attack. The two of them retreated. The retreating Dan essences took the opportunity to look into the distance. He wanted to see if the others had defeated the enemy. But after a glance, his expression changed again. He saw that the other Dan essences were also blocked to different degrees. The mid-stage Dan essences from the Ning family had been injured. But his enemy was not the only two mid-stage Dan essences among the barbarians. It was an assassin in the Zephyr plane. In addition, there were two other Dan essences who were sent flying. Their opponents were a monk in the Zephyr plane, and the other was a black ape in the Zephyr plane. How is this possible? Dan essence's eyes were full of disbelief. A mid-stage Dan essences was actually suppressed by an enemy in the Zephyr plane. Such a thing that went against the rules of heaven and earth was already very special if it happened to only one person. But now, there were 4 mid-stage Dan essences who were all in the same situation. Boom! Just as Dan essence's expression was shocked, another violent vibration came from the distance. Then, there was the sound of someone coughing up blood. Blood splattered in the sky. Could it be that the enemy was defeated? Dan essence's face suddenly brightened up. He quickly retreated, no longer fighting Zichen head-on. At the same time, he turned his head to look in the direction of the battle. But after a glance, the light on his face froze. He was shocked again because the one who coughed up blood was not a barbarian, but someone on their side. Moreover, the enemy was only a demonic beast in the Zephyr plane. In addition, the other mid-stage Dan essences were more or less suppressed. Only the 2 mid-stage Dan essences from the barbarians still had the upper hand. But these two were also unable to defeat the enemy quickly. Peng! Peng! At this moment, Zichen rushed up like lightning. Holding the broken spear, he launched more than 10 attacks at Dan essences. Each attack was extremely vicious and powerful, so much so that Dan essences kept retreating while defending. After more than 10 attacks, Dan essences could clearly feel that Zichen's attacks had weakened. His attacks were no longer as fierce. A hint of joy instantly appeared on his extremely shocked expression because he knew the reason for this. Yuanli. Although these Zephyrs were strong and their battle techniques were powerful and terrifying, far surpassing the average genius, and their battle prowess was comparable to that of Sky Realm cultivators, this could not rule out the fact that they were Zephyrs. As long as they were Zephyrs, the energy in their bodies would not be strong. Compared to mid-stage Dan essences, the energy in the bodies of Zephyrs was almost pitifully small. Even if the two sides were evenly matched in battle, as the battle dragged on, Zephyrs would eventually run out of energy. And when that time came, these Zephyrs would be like vegetables on the chopping board. They could be cut into pieces however they wanted. To compete with a Zephyr in a battle of attrition, although this method of winning was somewhat shameless, facing such a powerful Zephyr, he obviously did not care. Everyone, hold on for a while. When they run out of energy, it will be time for us to destroy them. Dan Essences was excited because of this discovery. At the same time, he shared this discovery with the other Dan Essences. After that, a look of realization appeared on each of their faces. The shock from before had turned into joy. Indeed, after finding a way to destroy their enemies, they were prepared for a long battle. From their previous half-attacking, half-defending state, they had completely turned into a defensive state. Of course, the two who were fiercely fighting Haifeng and Wild Wolf were still attacking fiercely. Moreover, because they had just broken through, their strength was still lacking. Therefore, they were in a state of being suppressed. Out of the 8 mid-stage core cultivators, 6 of them chose to defend, which changed the situation of the battle instantly. When Wild Wolf and Black Wind saw this, they widened their eyes in shock, their eyeballs almost falling out of their sockets. These Zephyrs had actually forced the mid-stage Dan essences into a defensive state. This shocked them and made them speechless. In comparison, although the 2 of them were mid-stage Dan essences, compared to these Zephyrs, they were indeed weak. The battle here had already entered a defensive state and did not seem very intense. In comparison, the battle between the primal core early-stage cultivators in the distance was much more exciting and intense. It did not take long for a primal core stage cultivator to be killed. And as the battle progressed, the Dan essences of the 8 forces could not withstand the number of opponents. Gradually, there were casualties. Of course, among the Dan essences that died, the most were the normal Dan essences on Zichen's side. Just as Haifeng had predicted, seeing their companions die one by one, fear grew in their hearts under the threat of death. Originally, they had gone to the Dan pavilion to form their Dan, which was a proof of their fear of death. They would rather give up on breaking through than experience the heavenly lightning tribulation. Therefore, at this moment, this fear was magnified again. After reaching a certain point, they showed signs of running away. In comparison, those who had endured the heavenly lightning tribulation were fiercer and crazier as they fought. Chapter 608. A few mid-stage primal core realm cultivators who had been on the defensive saw this and grinned hideously. They switched from defense to offense, and a powerful aura surged around them. Haha, you've used up all your Yuanli, right? Then die. The cold voice and the maniacal laughter echoed in the air as the mid-stage primal core realm cultivators began to counterattack. But before they could launch a powerful shorekill attack, the hideous grins on their faces froze and then disappeared. Their faces were filled with shock. Because in the next moment, almost all of them did the same thing. They took out their Yuanli and swallowed it, instantly recovering their Yuanli. The primal core realm cultivators were speechless. They thought that their opponents had used up all their Yuanli and could slaughter them next. Who knew that they still had Yuanli? The 8 of them looked at each other from afar, not knowing what to say. Kill them quickly. They were speechless, but Zichen had something to say. His powerful spiritual sense spread out in an instant, covering the people on his side. Then, he said coldly, kill them in one blow. As soon as he finished speaking, Zichen held the broken spear in his left hand and pointed at primal core with his right. This finger move naturally borrowed the power of the finger bone. In the next moment, a terrifying aura surged from his finger. Such an aura made primal core's expression change drastically. He let out a loud roar and desperately blocked with his elixir weapon. The elixir weapon emitted a bright light and surged with primal core's aura, blocking in front of him. Clang! As Zichen's finger fell, a terrifying energy surged wildly. The elixir weapon in front of him trembled and was knocked out of his hand. At the same time, the finger continued to move forward. After breaking the layers of defensive light shield around primal core, it directly pointed at his heart. As the finger fell, a bloody hole appeared on primal core's body. Then, the powerful energy surging from the finger also knocked primal core away. At this moment, a silver light flashed on Zichen's back. The heavenly thunder wings emitted a bright silver light and appeared. The broken spear that should have been in his left hand was instantly switched to his right hand. At the same time, his body emitted a dazzling golden light. Zichen's body began to emit 3 colors of blood, gold, and silver. That blinding light was like a tricolored sun. His eyes were filled with cold killing intent. Then, holding his spear, he flapped his wings and rushed up. Danuan's face was already filled with shock after being injured in one strike. However, When Zichen transformed into a three-colored light and rushed over, Dan Yuan's eyes widened. Then, he saw the three-colored light flash before his eyes. Pu. A tri-colored light flashed, and a human head flew high into the air. Endless blood spurted out from the neck. It was a mid-stage primal core cultivator, and he died just like that. After these cold words, Zichen annihilated the enemy in the blink of an eye. At the same time, in a few other directions, Tyrant and the others had also unleashed their ferocious attacks. Buzz. The demon subduing pestle in his hand suddenly began to tremble. Pure Buddhist power dispersed from the demon subduing pestle, and then the demon subduing pestle was filled with a powerful aura. Tyrant held the demon subduing pestle and smashed it towards the head of the middle stage primordial core cultivator. Golden light flashed, and the demon subduing pestle smashed down with great force. With a sharp whistling sound, it broke through Dan Yuan's defense and smashed into the opponent's head. With a loud bang, the primal core cultivator was sent flying. After being smashed, he instantly became dizzy and saw stars. Tyrant held the demon subduing pestle and quickly followed up. Then, he unleashed another powerful attack with great force. Rumbling sounds kept coming from the sky like the beating of drums. Tyrant struck more than 10 times in a row with lightning speed. Each strike carried great force. Under the continuous attacks, the primal core cultivator could not even put up an effective defense. After a series of fierce attacks, the primal core cultivator's vision turned black, and he actually fainted. Just as he fainted, a destructive force emerged from the demon subduing pestle and instantly obliterated his vitality. Another mid-stage primal core cultivator had died. Boom. At the same time, there was also a loud explosion in the direction of the demon ape. A mid-stage primal core cultivator had half of his body shattered by the black rod. Pu. Monstrous killing intent surged. A sharp sword light flashed, and an arm was detached from the body of a primal core cultivator. This was the most powerful attack of Zhong Haotian and the others so far. Now that it was suddenly used, it had a clear effect. Longhu roared at the sky. The roar of the dragon and tiger resounded through the air. Then, its speed suddenly increased. Just as Dan Yuan was in shock, it rushed in front of him. Then, it raised its tiger claws high and slapped at Dan Yuan. Boom! A loud explosion sounded in the sky. The mid-stage primal core cultivator's body was crushed by the tiger claw. At the same time, his powerful vitality was also extinguished. Of the 8 mid-stage primal core cultivators, 3 had died and 2 were injured. In another place, the primal core cultivator that Wang Qiong and the others had joined forces to attack was also injured. Just as the primal core cultivator staggered back, a figure walked out of the void behind him. It was a young man with a bone knife in his hand. The moment he appeared, he quickly slashed 3 times at the primal core cultivator. Sharp blade light flashed, and a terrifying aura surged. The primal core cultivator, who was already injured, was instantly drowned by the 3 consecutive blade lights. When the blade lights dissipated, the primal core cultivator had already been divided into 3 parts. The incomplete corpse fell from the sky. The 4th mid-stage primal core cultivator had died. After the young man killed a primal core cultivator, he quickly consumed primal core liquid and pills to recover his soul power. Then, he moved closer to Wang Qiong and the others. In the blink of an eye, he had killed 4 people. The other 4 mid-stage primal core cultivators were also shocked. 2 of them had been chased by the demonic ape and Zhong Haotian. They were seriously injured and were on the verge of death. After that, Zhong Haotian and the demonic ape increased their strength again. In the surging energy, the 2 of them finally killed their enemies. As for the other 2 mid-stage primal core cultivators, they actually wanted to escape when they saw that the situation was not good. However, under the siege of so many strong cultivators, the 2 of them were also seriously injured and finally died. They did not self-destruct immediately. This was the worst choice in their lives. The 8 mid-stage primal core cultivators were all killed in the blink of an eye. Only a few of them suffered light injuries. This could be said to be a complete victory. The battle in the sky continued. However, the death of the early stage primal core cultivators had not been decided yet. Zichen looked at the sky coldly and said, "Kill them all. Leave no one alive." Aside from Wang Shan, the others all charged at the early-stage primal core cultivators of the 8 factions. As for Wang Shan, he went to pick up the spirit rings and alchemy weapons. All the resources of this group were currently under Wang Shan's responsibility. As they charged forward, Wild Wolf and Black Wind clearly put in a lot of effort. This was because in today's battle, the two of them had seen the strong combat prowess of Zichen's group. Although their cultivations were the highest here, in terms of true combat prowess, the two of them could not even rank among the top 5. After today's battle, the two of them were completely convinced. Hence, the two of them charged forward with all their might, using their actions to tell Zichen that they were working hard as well. Seeing that their own mid-stage primal core cultivators had died, the rest of the primal core cultivators no longer had the will to fight. In a short time, they began to collapse. Moreover, everyone's combat prowess was extremely strong. Against the early-stage primal core cultivators, it was a complete slaughter. A battle where the 8 factions slaughtered the barbarians quickly developed into a battle where the barbarians slaughtered the 8 factions. In the previous battle, many of the ordinary primal core cultivators on Zichen's side were scared out of their wits by death. They began to flee frantically. The primal core cultivators of the 8 factions were chasing after them. Although the ordinary primal core cultivators were not very strong, their fleeing speed was very fast. The experts of the 8 factions only chased for a while before giving up decisively. After that, they turned back and continued to slaughter the barbarians. As for the escaping ordinary primal core cultivators, after seeing their pursuers leave, they heaved a huge sigh of relief. Seeing their companions die, they were both shocked and scared. Hence, they decisively retreated. A alchemy weapon, a drop of mid-grade primal core liquid, and 100,000 upper-grade primal stones. The expressions on their faces were almost the same. They were all filled with the joy and excitement of surviving a calamity. Selling my life, selling my life. One of the primal core cultivators thought disdainfully. He was afraid of death, and after escaping, he was worried that Zichen and the others would catch up with him. Hence, he sped up and flew into the distance. With his wealth, he could live a comfortable life for a long time. Moreover, he had already thought of his destination, which was the market. There, no one would dare to break the rules and fight in the market. Even if Zichen found them there, he would not dare to do anything to them. Suddenly, a white light flashed in front of one of the primal core cultivators and turned into a white figure. It was a white rat, only 1 meter long. Its intelligent little eyes stared at the other party. "It's you." Dan Yuan's expression changed. He naturally recognized the spirit-devouring rat that followed Zichen. "Everyone else is fighting. What are you doing here?" The spirit-devouring rat asked through telepathy. Its voice was very cold. Dan Yuan's expression changed. He did not answer the spirit-devouring rat's question. Instead, he carefully released his spiritual thoughts. After not sensing the aura of Zichen and the others, he was relieved. "You should be running away. You took the reward, but you want to run away. Sure enough, humans are the most cunning beings. You go back on your words. Cunning and despicable." The spirit-devouring rat spoke again. Its intelligent little eyes had a hint of ferocity. "Damn rat, it's none of your business. Die." Dan Yuan's face was filled with murderous intent. The energy in his body surged. Then, he smashed the spirit-devouring rat's head with his elixir weapon. But before his attack landed, he saw the spirit-devouring rat turn into a beam of light and rush towards him. Then, it crashed into his body. The spirit-devouring rat was less than 1 meter long. It could be considered a little guy from head to toe. However, when it crashed into Dan Yuan, the latter felt as if he was hit by a mountain. His body was about to fall apart. Boom. Sure enough, in the next moment, Dan Yuan's body exploded with a loud bang. His flesh and blood turned into dust. The power of the spirit-devouring rat's collision was actually comparable to the power of the devil ape's staff. "Tempage, I'm also very powerful." Seeing the flesh and blood falling from the sky, the spirit-devouring rat was very proud. What Haifeng could think of, Zichen naturally also expected. Fear was human instinct, and greed was human nature. If these two were superimposed, it would naturally create many Dan Yuan who fled out of fear and greed. Therefore, Zichen had already ordered the spirit-devouring rats to wait in the distance. His purpose was to kill all Dan Yuan who dared to escape. Moreover, the spirit-devouring rats had extreme speed. Without Dan Yuan, they could escape smoothly. Chapter 609. The spirit-devouring rat displayed its extreme speed and charged towards the fleeing primal core cultivators, killing them in a frenzy. Its attacks were extremely ruthless, leaving almost no corpses intact. As the number of primal core cultivators it killed increased, its originally intelligent eyes were filled with savagery. There were too many despicable and cunning humans who went back on their word. What made the spirit-devouring rat even angrier was that these humans took the rewards without caring about the lives of their employers. They only had themselves in their hearts. The spirit-devouring rat didn't know how many primal core cultivators had died in the battle, but it was counting the primal core cultivators it had killed. Now, more than 20 had died at its hands. And this number was still increasing. When all the mid-stage primal core cultivators were killed, it was already the end of the battle. When Wang Qiong and the others joined the battle of the early-stage primal core cultivators, a massacre had already begun. Soon, the battle was over. The 48 primal core cultivators from the 8 forces were all killed. Not a single one was left alive. Wang Shan was walking among the corpses, cleaning up the battlefield and picking up the primal core cultivators' weapons, spirit rings, and energy primal core cultivators. As for Lu Peng and the others, they were doing a head count, including the primal core cultivators' corpses. As for the surviving primal core cultivators, they had already left to heal their wounds. Zichen stood in the air, calmly watching all this. Behind him, Heifeng and Wild Wolf stood with their heads lowered, not even daring to breathe loudly. After 15 minutes, the head count was over. Wang Shan walked towards Zichen in the air. Before the battle, we had 135 early-stage primal core cultivators. In this battle, 56 died, leaving 46. Among them, 18 are heavily injured, and the rest have light injuries. As for the primal core cultivators from the 8 forces, they were all killed. Not a single one was left alive. As soon as Wang Shan arrived in front of Zichen, he began to report the situation of the battle. After a short pause, he continued, "Among our group of early Dan primary stage cultivators, there are 33 people who are missing. I think they ran away because of fear." Zichen only nodded calmly. Wang Shan glanced at Wild Wolf and Heifeng before turning to leave. Behind Zichen, Wild Wolf and Heifeng broke out in cold sweat from Wang Shan's gaze. This was because among the 33 people who had fled, more than 80% of their core essences had been recruited by the two of them. "We were incompetent. Please punish us, sir." Before Zichen could speak, the two of them took the initiative to admit their mistakes. Zichen waved his hand and said in a calm voice, "You were just following my orders. I don't blame you for this. Speaking of which, I was too anxious about this. I thought that I could make up for all of this with high treatment, but it seems that it won't work. They accepted the reward from our Lord, but they actually left halfway. This is obviously disloyal and despicable. Let's take some people and chase after them. We must capture these despicable people." Wild Wolf's expression was full of anger. Zichen didn't say anything and just shook his head. The two immediately shut their mouths and didn't dare to act on their own accord. Ever since they had seen Zichen's powerful battle prowess, they no longer dared to disobey him. Zichen stood in the air and looked into the distance calmly, as if he was waiting for something. A moment later, a white light appeared in his line of sight. It was flying towards him at an extremely fast speed. "That's a spirit-devouring rat." After seeing the figure in the white light, Wild Wolf and Heifeng's pupils shrank slightly. The spirit-devouring rat appeared from the horizon and headed straight for Zichen. When it got close, it transmitted its voice. "A total of 33 escaped core essences have been found. They're all here." The spirit-devouring rat didn't deliberately suppress its transmission, so Wild Wolf and Heifeng could hear it. After the spirit-devouring rat finished speaking, A white light flashed in front of it. Then, 30 core essences, 30 core weapons, and 30 spirit rings appeared. Wild Wolf and Haifeng's expressions changed instantly when they saw the spirit-devouring rat take out these items. They didn't think that Zi Chen had already anticipated this and had already made arrangements for it. And this little rat that looked more like a pet actually had the strength to kill more than 30 core essences. This was truly terrifying. Now, the two of them couldn't help but believe that anything that could follow Zi Chen, even if it was just a flying rat, had extraordinary means. Give these things to Wang Shan. In the future, he'll be in charge of all things related to resources, Zi Chen said calmly. All right. The spirit-devouring rat nodded and left with these items. Looking at Zi Chen's back, Wild Wolf and Haifeng only felt a chill in their hearts. Zi Chen's powerful battle strength had already made them afraid, but now, Zi Chen's mental calculation was the real reason why the two of them were terrified. Zi Chen turned around and his calm eyes fell on the two of them. Then, he said lightly, "Go and see how the injuries of those core essences are. Tell them to rest well. The second battle should still be a long time." The two of them nodded and then turned to leave. During this time, they actually didn't dare to look at Zi Chen's eyes. Moreover, the two of them didn't know when their clothes were completely drenched in cold sweat. Everyone left, even the corpses on the ground were taken care of. Only Zi Chen was still standing in the air, his calm eyes looking forward. That direction was the depths of the Bedlam lands, where Chaos City was located. There were 5 overlord forces there, as well as many other forces, big and small. Although Zi Chen's expression was calm, he was very irritated and annoyed. He originally thought that he could create a force that would make people tremble in fear and become famous in the Bedlam lands. However, in today's battle, this force that could only be called a team had exposed its most fundamental problem. And that was loyalty. Without a group of loyal subordinates, there was no way to fight a battle. So what if he recruited an army of core essences? As soon as the battle started and casualties appeared, there would be core essences who would flee in fear. With such a chaotic situation, not only would they not be able to destroy the enemy, but they would also cause endless panic. Once panic arose, the battle would be equivalent to losing. And today's battle was the most obvious example. If they hadn't killed the mid-stage core essences in the fastest speed and controlled the situation, there would have been more core essences who fled in fear. Zi Chen had once naively thought that by giving them enough rewards and resources, he would be able to make them work for him wholeheartedly and fight for him. However, reality proved that this was just Zi Chen's naive thinking. Human nature was the most complicated and unfathomable thing. Something's on your mind. Wang Xian'er appeared from afar. She was dressed in white and looked like a fairy. She leaned on Zi Chen's shoulder, her black hair cascading down like a waterfall. "No." Zi Chen smiled and hugged Wang Xian'er. Wang Xian'er leaned on Zi Chen's shoulder and closed her eyes, allowing the breeze to caress her face. She seemed to cherish this scene very much and didn't speak for a long time. Zi Chen was also silent and looked ahead. After a long time, Wang Xian'er slowly opened her eyes. She seemed to be talking to herself and said softly, "Back then, when father just became the city lord, there were many who came to join the Wang family of Yunxia City. However, they were all rejected by father. At that time, there were many experts, and many of them were famous. Father rejected all of them, which made many elders in the family unhappy. They questioned father and asked him why he did this. In the end, father only said one sentence and shut their mouths. At that time, father said that outsiders were unreliable. Instead of wasting resources on them, he might as well use these resources to nurture some reliable core essences. Haha, your father is indeed smart and farsighted." Zi Chen chuckled. Wang Xian'er slowly raised her head and looked at Zi Chen. She said softly, "Zi Chen, you have already done very well. Don't add so much pressure to yourself. At the very least, you have made 100 unreliable core essences believe in you and work for you." Zi Chen nodded. He could naturally hear the consolation and concern in Wang Xian'er's words. If he was given enough time, he could also nurture a loyal core essences army. However, it seemed that what he lacked the most now was time. Although he won the first battle and bought enough time for him, he only had 2 months at most. 2 months seemed to be a long time, but nurturing a core essence's army was undoubtedly a fool's dream. Unless he had 2 years, or even 20 years. According to the original plan, Zichen would expand his forces in the next 2 months. At the same time, he would continue to recruit core essences. However, after today's battle, Zichen had to give up on the idea of expanding his forces due to the lack of loyalty. The more core essences there were, the easier it was to cause chaos. Now, Zichen's only hope was to rely on the formation. LV Peng had returned with a piece of good news. He had found a suitable place to set up the formation. The battle with the overlords would be held in the formation. Wang Xian left from the sky to look for LV Peng. Zichen wanted to discuss the formation with her and old Mo. Moreover, time was tight. Therefore, they had to go and scout the terrain immediately. Before LV Peng arrived, a figure flew over from afar. It was Longhu. "Are you worried about the disloyalty of the core essences?" Longhu asked directly. This was the biggest hidden danger in the team so far. There was nothing to hide. Zichen nodded. Longhu thought for a while and said, "I can't give you any advice regarding the current core essences. However, if it's the future core essences, I can guarantee their loyalty." Zichen looked at Longhu and waited for him to continue. "In my inherited memory, there is a way to control the soul." Control the soul. Zichen was shocked. The soul was the most mysterious thing for a cultivator, and also the foundation of a cultivator. If there was a problem with the soul, it would mean that there was a problem with the cultivator. In the best-case scenario, the cultivator would suffer from dementia, while in the worst-case scenario, they would die instantly. That's right, it's a soul seed art. Once it's implanted into a cultivator's soul, it's equivalent to controlling the cultivator like a puppet. It can guarantee their loyalty, but... Longhu paused. But what? Zichen asked. Chapter 610. The art of soul seeds was equivalent to turning humans into puppets, pure battle machines. Their strength would never improve in their lifetime, and they would never be able to reach the peak again. They would only end up dying in battle, but their loyalty was 100%. For Zichen, Longhu's arrival was a timely piece of good news. It was like giving a pillow when one was sleepy, or a pie falling from the sky, or sending charcoal in snowy weather. There were only benefits to be had. Such a method could solve the problem, but it was against human morality. Although it was almost extinct in the Tianwu continent, it did not mean that it had truly disappeared. It was inevitable for sentimental people to be sentimental. Zichen fell silent and fell into deep thought. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Otherwise, we won't be able to win. Longhu seemed to know what Zichen was thinking. Loyalty was Zichen's biggest problem at the moment. If this problem was not solved, their temporary team of Dan primary realm cultivators would be destroyed by the factions of the Bedlam land. Zichen did not hesitate for long. He nodded and said, "All right, come with me to the core formation pavilion." When LV Peng arrived, Longhu and Zichen were about to leave. "We'll be back by nightfall tomorrow. The matter of the formation can wait." With that, Zichen disappeared with Longhu. When Zichen and Longhu arrived at the core formation pavilion, the second batch of Dan primary realm cultivators had successfully broken through and were ready to head to Zichen's area. They were both surprised and overjoyed when they saw Zichen. "Master! Master is here!" The 20 Dan primary realm cultivators were overjoyed. Obviously, they thought that Zichen was here to welcome them. They were extremely excited when they thought that they would be able to obtain a Dan weapon as soon as they broke through, and that they would receive 100,000 high-grade primal stones every year. However, Zichen's expression was the complete opposite of the Dan primary realm cultivators. His face was gloomy. Zichen glanced at Longhu. The latter nodded and flew toward the core formation pavilion. There were already 20 cultivators sitting cross-legged in the pavilion, waiting to break through. "My lord, are you here to receive us?" "My lord, we are willing to serve you. We will not hesitate to go through fire and water for you." The group of Dan origin experts did not notice Zichen's ugly expression. They were very excited and wanted to leave a good impression in front of Zichen. Of course, their goal was naturally to obtain a pill weapon. Zichen's gloomy face slowly relaxed, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He decided to tell these people the truth. Previously, I recruited a Dan Prime team. There were 135 people, but after the first battle yesterday, only 46 people survived. At first, the group of Origin Dan experts were shocked by the number of experts Zichen had recruited, and their faces were filled with nervousness. They were afraid that Zichen would say that the number of Origin Dan experts was enough and that he no longer needed them. However, when they heard the huge number of casualties, they were stunned and their expressions began to change. In yesterday's battle, 56 people died on the battlefield, Zichen said. My lord, there are 135 people in total, and 46 are still alive. It should be 89 people who died in battle. A Dan Origin expert summoned the courage to correct Zichen's mistake. No. Zichen shook his head and said, only 46 people really died on the battlefield. The remaining 33 people fled the battlefield because they were afraid of death. When the group of Origin Dan experts heard this, their expressions changed. Obviously, they had understood the meaning of Zichen's words. These 33 Origin Dan experts had fled with their pill weapons. Before the battle, in order to boost their morale, I paid each of them 10,000 high-grade yuan stones in advance, and also gave them an additional drop of mid-grade yuan liquid, Zichen said again. This time, the expressions of the Dan Origin experts were completely frozen. While they were shocked by Zichen's generosity, there were also some who were envious of these 33 people. They had actually taken a huge amount of money and successfully fled. However, Zichen's following words completely dispelled their similar thoughts. None of the 33 people who fled left alive. Ignoring the pale faces of the Dan Origin experts, Zichen said coldly, now, I will give you one more chance to choose. Stay or leave. At the same time, Zichen turned his head and looked at the line of Yukong who were waiting to break through. He said, I will also give you one more chance to choose. If you want to live the life of an ordinary Dan Origin expert, then you can leave on your own after breaking through. If you don't want to live the life of an ordinary Dan Origin expert, then join my team. The treatment will be the same as before. After Zichen's words, both the Dan Origin experts and Yukong fell into deep thought. Their expressions changed, but no one said anything immediately. Zichen was not in a hurry, either, because Longhu was pacing around the core formation pavilion. Waves of mysterious soul power seeped out of his body and surged towards Yukong. It was a special method of controlling soul power. It was soundless and invisible to the naked eye. Even spiritual thoughts were unable to sense it. It was slowly merging with their souls. 20 Dan Origin experts made their decisions one after another. 15 of them chose to stay. It was obvious that the temptation of Dan weapons and wealth was too great. It would take a lot of courage to give up on Dan weapons and wealth. Zichen nodded. He did not force them, nor did he kill them. He only asked them to leave, but before they left, he warned them to keep the core formation pavilion a secret. The 5 of them nodded and left at a rapid pace. They won't keep it a secret. Once they leave, they will immediately tell us what happened here. Instead of letting them go, it's better to kill them on the spot. Longhu walked over with a cold look in his eyes. It's fine. They will know about the core formation pavilion sooner or later. Zichen shook his head and transmitted his voice, it's done. Longhu nodded and transmitted his voice, I've controlled 20 people in total. That's my limit. They will head to our area as soon as they break through. Zichen nodded. Since the soul seed had been planted, there was no point in staying here. Therefore, Zichen and Longhu left with the 15 Dan Origin experts. Because of the 15 Dan Origin experts, their speed was greatly reduced. They only returned on the 3rd day. Wild Wolf and Haifeng were the first to welcome them. They told them that the injuries of the Dan Origin experts had been stabilized. Those with the most serious injuries would recover in a month. After Zichen said a few words, Wild Wolf and Haifeng left. Then, Zichen transmitted his voice. Wang Qiong came and took the 15 Dan Origin experts away. At the same time, Wang Shan also prepared Dan weapons for them. Zichen didn't return to his room. Instead, he arranged things in the air. Next, Zichen called Tyrant over and told him and the devil ape to guard this place. At the same time, he told them that once Wang Qiong and the others were done with their business, they could start the baptism again. During the last period of the ancient battlefield, Longhu had led them to hunt many ancient beasts. It was enough for them to be baptized. There might be less than 2 months left for them. Therefore, they should improve their strength as much as possible during this period. What about you? When will you be baptized? Monk asked. Let's talk about it when I come back. Then, Zichen brought Longhu and LV Peng to the place where the formation was set up. 2 days later, Zichen returned. As soon as he returned, LV Peng buried himself in organizing the formation materials. Wang Qiong and the others had already started to be baptized. Monk guarded the place, the devil ape went out to monitor, and the spirit-devouring rats were also at the periphery of the area. They sensed everything with spiritual energy. At the same time, they relied on their natural advantage of spiritual energy to find some mineral veins. Everyone was busy with their own duties until the second batch of enemy Dan origin experts arrived. As one of the main forces of the team, Zichen had already prepared the items for the baptism. As soon as he returned, Zichen visited the injured Dan origin experts. Then, he began to be baptized. The blood essence of ancient beasts, elixirs, and precious herbs were placed neatly in layers. A faint fragrance lingered in the air. It was the unique scent of a young girl. It was obvious that Wang Xiana had stayed here for a long time. These things were carefully prepared for Zichen. Just the blood essence alone was placed in 4 layers. The lowest layer was the blood essence of ancient beasts. There were more than 10 bottles. Although they were ordinary blood essence, they were still descendants of ancient beasts, such as the little demonic leopard and wolf cub. The second layer was the blood essence of ancient beasts. Although the quantity was small, there were still 8 bottles. Even though the bottles were sealed, they could still feel the ferocious aura from them. 8 bottles of ancient beasts' blood essence would definitely be sold at a sky-high price in the outside world. However, they were only placed in the second layer for Zichen's baptism. There were only 3 bottles of ancient beasts' blood essence on the third layer. However, the ferocious aura that surged from them was extremely terrifying. It actually suppressed the top layer. The blood essence on this layer was from ancient beasts. Once it was placed in the outside world, even the overlords would go crazy for it. However, the blood essence on the third layer wasn't the strongest or the most precious. The truly priceless blood essence was on the fourth layer. It was the blood essence of ancient beasts that was sealed in a white jade bottle. However, at this moment, the white jade bottle was emitting a golden light. Although there wasn't any ferocious aura, there was a divine aura. This was a drop of true ancient beast's blood essence. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary ancient beast. It was the blood essence of a king of ancient beasts, the Longhu Supreme Beast. Although there was only 1 drop, the inexplicable power it contained was incredible. This blood essence was the foundation of Zichen's baptism. Other than that, there were a few stalks of 10,000-year-old ancient herbs, some blood essence of spiritual creatures, and various other items that could strengthen the medicinal effects. Looking at the extremely loving arrangement of these items, a smile appeared on Zichen's face. After that, he threw all the blood essence into the huge crater in front of him. In an instant, the crater emitted a brilliant light. Waves of ferocious aura began to surge, and the sounds of various exotic beasts could be heard. After the blood essence of a supreme beast was thrown in, it was as if a Longhu supreme beast had rushed into the crater. After all the blood essence and ancient herbs were thrown in, Zichen also entered the crater in a flash. He sat down cross-legged and dived into the bottom of the crater. There was an earth fire at the bottom of the crater. This was the key to melting the blood essence and ancient herbs. At the same time, a figure appeared where Zichen was standing. It was the old tortoise in its old form. With a wave of his sleeve, energy surged and instantly sealed the entire crater. Next, it was time for Zichen's baptism. No one was allowed to disturb him. Chapter 611. 10 days later, the news of the 8 forces being wiped out reached the depths of the inner region and Chaos City. Such slow efficiency was also because Zi Chen had wiped out all the core essence experts of the 8 forces. Before the experts of the 8 forces arrived, they were arrogant enough to think that they could kill all the barbarians, so they didn't leave anyone behind to pass on the information. The 8 forces had sent a total of 48 primordial core cultivators, and 8 of them were mid-stage primordial core cultivators. Such a powerful team had actually been completely annihilated by the barbarians. When the news reached Chaos City, it caused an uproar. Those barbarians' strength was only in the flight realm. How could they kill so many core essence experts? Immediately, many forces were inquiring about the details of the battle. Soon, the accurate data of that battle spread out. The group of barbarians was indeed at the flight realm. Although their battle prowess was strong, they did not have the strength to kill all the primal core experts. The reason why they were able to kill the enemy was because they had recruited more than 100 primal core experts. In the battle that day, although Zi Chen led his people to kill all the core essence experts of the 8 forces, he didn't kill all the flight realm experts. Moreover, the battle caused a huge commotion, attracting many flight realm experts to watch from afar. As long as one wanted to, they could naturally replay the battle through them. Other than that, all kinds of news spread to Chaos City. This included the various data of the experts of the barbarians. It was even accurate to every single person. The expert from the Shangguan clan guarding the core-bearing pavilion was also killed by a barbarian called Zi Chen. The barbarian was very strong. After killing the barbarian, he also successfully took over the core-bearing pavilion. The first wave recruited 20 primordial core experts, and the second wave recruited 15. The rest of the core essence experts were also recruited by the barbarians at a sky-high price. When the news of the barbarians' high price for recruiting core essence experts reached Chaos City, even the major forces and overlord forces gasped. To recruit ordinary core essence experts, the barbarians actually offered 100,000 high-grade vitality stones, an elixir weapon, and a drop of vitality liquid as a reward. With such a generous offer, even the overlord forces had to think twice before hiring them. At the same time, the major forces were shocked. They were all guessing how many good things the barbarians had obtained in the ancient battlefield this time. The entire Chaos City was in an uproar. Almost all the cultivators and forces were talking about the barbarians. What they were most concerned about was naturally the barbarians' gains in the ancient battlefield this time. In the first battle, the 8 major powers had lost. The experts of their clans were furious. A majestic major power had actually been defeated by the barbarians once again. This was simply a disgrace. However, this battle wasn't without results. They already knew how strong the barbarians were, how many people they had, and how courageous they were. Among the 100 or so primordial core realm cultivators, more than 30 of them were scared away. Clearly, in the face of true death, all external objects were useless. Only life mattered. Moreover, the major factions were also considering that if they sent out more Jindan essences and more mid-stage powerhouses, then perhaps more Jindan essences would be scared away. The barbarians' team would naturally collapse on its own. At that time, with just a few barbarians, no matter how strong their combat power was, they would not be able to resist a super strong Dan Prime team. Moreover, ever since they had faced the barbarians, the 8 major powers had not gained the upper hand even once. The large number of primordial core realm cultivators who had died had already shaken the foundations of the 8 major powers. If they continued to increase the number of primordial core realm cultivators and failed again, then their strength would be greatly damaged. At that time, they would naturally be targeted by the other major powers. However, if they did not exterminate the barbarians, they would not be able to swallow this in their hearts. Moreover, the overlord powers had not made any moves for a long time. This made them helpless and passive. Fortunately, when Zi Chen and the others left, they had robbed in the inner regions. As a result, they had offended many major powers. The experts of the 8 major powers decided to lobby such existences to send out troops. Lobbying was much simpler than they had imagined. They only told these major powers some of the things that the barbarians had done in the outer regions. For example, they had recruited an ordinary primordial core realm cultivator at a high price, giving each of them a drop of yuan liquid, and generously giving each of them 10,000 high-grade yuan stones before the battle. These all represented resources. Moreover, if the barbarians were willing to take out so many resources, it meant that they must have even more such resources on them. Therefore, these major powers nodded and agreed readily. They were willing to fight for justice and suppress the barbarians who were like bandits. In an instant, many major powers responded and joined the crusade. Among them, there were many who did not have any enmity with Zichen. They were simply interested in Zichen's many resources. Therefore, under the alliance of many major powers, a primordial core team was formed very quickly. This team was very large, with over 100 people. Moreover, the number of mid-stage primordial core realm cultivators among them was as high as 15. This was a true primordial core team. Every primordial core realm cultivator in this team had been nurtured by these major powers. They had experienced heavenly lightning tribulations on their own. Every one of them was much stronger than ordinary primordial core realm cultivators. The formation of such a large-scale primordial core team was almost enough to wipe out all the major powers in Chaos City. Therefore, after they had gathered, they set off towards the outer regions. In the outer regions, because of the magnificent battle that day, the barbarians' morale was very high. When many primordial core realm cultivators heard the details of that battle, they were also extremely shocked by the barbarians' powerful battle strength. Therefore, after that battle, many primordial core realm leaders of major powers took the initiative to give up their own powers and join Zichen. The chaotic lands were already very chaotic. There were primordial core realm cultivators dying in battle almost every day. Therefore, there were many primordial core realm cultivators here. There were also many who were not afraid of death. Moreover, Zichen was offering a sky-high reward. This undoubtedly stimulated the nerves of these primordial core realm cultivators who were not afraid of death. Therefore, after that battle, even more primordial core realm cultivators chose to join. Very quickly, the number of primordial core realm cultivators on Zichen's side broke the 100 mark again. Moreover, there was an endless supply of primordial core realm cultivators from the core formation pavilion. The number of primordial core realm cultivators in the team quickly exceeded the initial 135. Looking at the increasing number of primordial core realm cultivators, the monk's face was full of smiles. His eyes were also filled with longing. He seemed to be able to see the scene when he formed the primordial core realm army. However, very soon, the devil ape brought bad news. The enemy forces had sent primordial core realm cultivators again. They were already on the way. This time, the scale was even larger. There were even more cultivators. What? So fast? The monk was shocked when he heard the news. Only a month had passed, and the enemy primordial core realm cultivators had sent out cultivators again. Clearly, the enemy had started to send out troops after hearing the news of the complete annihilation of the primordial core realm cultivators. This speed was also beyond everyone's expectations. Zichen was still undergoing the baptism. Wang Qiong and the rest had not appeared. However, the enemy primordial core realm cultivators had come without warning. In an instant, the atmosphere became very tense. The monk used the fastest speed to unify the number of primordial core realm cultivators on his side. So far, they had 193 early-stage primordial core realm cultivators on their side, close to the 200 mark. However, less than 30 of them had experienced the heavenly lightning tribulation. How many of them are there? How long will it take for them to arrive? There are 15 mid-stage primordial core realm cultivators and 130 early-stage primordial core realm cultivators. According to the current speed, they should arrive in 6 days. 6 days. In such a short period of time, the monk instantly frowned. Moreover, the 130 early-stage primordial core realm cultivators on the other side had obviously withstood the heavenly lightning tribulation. Their combat power was much stronger than the primordial core realm cultivators on their side. Although they had a slight advantage in numbers, Their combat power was almost twice that of the primordial core realm cultivators on the other side. In such a battle, the outcome would be clear at a glance. Continue to pay attention. The monk kept frowning. He was only good at fighting, not management. He did not expect that Zi Chen and the rest would encounter such a thorny problem right after their baptism. If only Wang Qiong was here, the monk thought to himself. As a natural commander, the monk believed that there was a huge gap between him and Wang Qiong in this aspect. Now, he could only pray that the enemy primordial core realm cultivators would arrive later, and that Wang Qiong and the rest would finish their baptism earlier. As if the heavens had spoken, the monk's prayer had moved the true Buddha. The enemy primordial core realm cultivators indeed slowed down greatly in the following period of time. With this decrease, their speed was reduced by half. They should have been able to arrive in 6 days, but now they needed 12 days. The monk did not understand the sudden decrease in speed. However, when he saw the increasingly nervous expressions of his primordial core realm cultivators, he understood. Clearly, the reason for the enemy primordial core realm cultivators slowing down was to create pressure. They wanted their primordial core realm cultivators to sense the huge difference in strength between the two sides and choose to flee. This was a psychological attack, and it had to be said that it was very effective. The primordial core realm cultivators on their side also became increasingly nervous. If not for the monk sitting cross-legged in the air and monitoring the surroundings, some of them would have already fled. However, this method only treated the symptoms and not the root cause. It prevented them from fleeing, but if they did not flee, they would not have any combat power left. 4 days passed in a row. The monk felt increasingly pressured. Furthermore, he did not know how to deal with the situation before him. Finally, on the 5th day, energy fluctuations came from the place where Wang Qiong and the rest were baptized. Strong auras appeared one after another. It was the group of people who had completed their baptisms and appeared one after another. Amidst the intense tremors, Wang Qiong and the rest rushed out from the ground. Their bodies shone with dazzling light. Furthermore, strong auras were released from their bodies. During this baptism, they had refined the essence blood of many ancient beast kings and many ancient beast kings, undergoing another transformation. As a result, their combat power increased by another level. The monk felt the energy fluctuations and was the first to rush over. When he saw that everyone had completed their baptisms, he revealed an expression of wild joy. In just a few short days, he was on the verge of collapse. "You all completed your baptisms. This is really great. What's wrong? Did something happen?" Wang Qiong asked when he felt the intense changes in the monk's expression. The depths sent out more primordial core realm cultivators. Furthermore, there are many of them. Just the middle stage primordial core realm cultivators alone are 15. The monk's words caused the joyful group, who had just completed their baptisms, to instantly feel the severity of the situation. Is it an overlord faction? To think that they came so quickly. Wang Qiong frowned slightly. Chapter 6:12. Monk told Wang Qiong about the enemy's elixir essence's movements and situation. Wang Qiong listened carefully, and his furrowed brows slowly relaxed. The enemy's elixir essence had many people and were powerful. They could have used their huge advantage in battle strength to crush them. However, they gave up on this direct and effective method of shock and chose to attack their minds. Although this method was very labor-saving and did not require the elixir essence to make a huge sacrifice, the results were almost the same except for the time it took. This seemed to be a perfect plan, but Wang Qiong saw the problem. Most of the elixir essence on his side came from the elixir formation pavilion. Although they were afraid of death, the elixir essence of the enemy forces were not all brave men. They were also afraid of death, and besides death, they had to consider many more problems. This was because the elixir essence team formed by the alliance of many forces did not trust each other and would not have a real leader. Therefore, this team was like a sheet of loose sand. Everyone had their own plans. There was no organization and no discipline. So what if there were many people? Therefore, although the enemy had many elixir essence, they were all scattered and had their own selfish motives. This battle was actually not difficult to fight. After understanding all this, Wang Qiong smiled faintly and asked, "How many more days until the enemy's elixir essence arrives? How's LV Peng's formation? Can it be used? How many elixir essence do we have now?" After saying this, Wang Qiong flew towards the elixir essence gathering place without waiting for Monk to answer. Wang Shan and the rest followed closely behind. Monk was like a little follower. He followed beside Wang Qiong and answered, "Based on the current speed, they should be here in 7 days. LV Peng's formation is only 1/3 complete and cannot be used. Moreover, Zi Chen said that this formation is used to deal with the overlord forces. As for our side, the number of elixir essence has exceeded 200, but almost half of them have lost their confidence and battle strength." Wang Qiong was surprised that so many elixir essence had been gathered in a short month. He asked again, "Have the 20 special elixir essence that Longhu mentioned before arrived?" "They have. They have been here for more than half a month. I arranged for the 20 of them to be alone." "What about Zi Chen?" "He is still undergoing baptism. The amount of blood essence he refined for his baptism is much more than ours. There's even Longhu's blood essence among them. Therefore, the baptism time will be much longer." This time, it was Wang Xian'er who spoke. She had personally prepared the items for Zi Chen's baptism. Wang Qiong nodded. Since Zi Chen was not around, he would be in charge of this battle. Wang Qiong quickly gathered a group of primal core cultivators. The group of primordial core cultivators gathered, but when they saw that the leader was only a flight realm cultivator, they were all stunned. Among the 200+ primordial core cultivators, more than 100 had never seen Wang Qiong before. "Lord Wang Qiong." It was only after the other core tier cultivators spoke respectfully that everyone realized that this was a leader. The leader of the barbarian forces was only at the flight tier. This was something that everyone knew, so no one found it strange. Wild Wolf and Heifeng stood straight behind Wang Qiong, looking like 2 loyal guards. Wang Qiong swept his gaze across the group of Dan Essence Realm cultivators, his cold eyes like blades. The situation was just as the monk had said. Many people had lost their will to fight. They were panicking and their eyes were flickering. "I just got the news that the enemy forces have sent primordial core cultivators here again." This was Wang Qiong's opening speech. "But I am not surprised, because we are enemies. When we fight with enemies, we have to be unscrupulous. Not to mention 100+ primordial core cultivators, even if they sent 500 or even 1,000, I would not be surprised." Wang Qiong's voice got louder and louder, and finally became cold. "But what surprised me is that after you heard the news, not only did you not feel excited, you were scared and even prepared to escape." Excited. Hearing Wang Qiong's reprimand, many primordial core cultivators were dumbfounded. There were so many enemies here, and they were so strong. Once they fought, they would die. Moreover, this was a battle that was impossible to win. Who could be excited? Shouldn't you be excited? Shouldn't you be excited? Each of you is enjoying a sky-high price, enjoying a treatment that far exceeds the primordial core cultivators of the overlord forces. Don't tell me that you are just sitting back and enjoying the fruits of others' labor. Shouldn't you be working for your employer? Wang Qiong's cold eyes swept across the group of primordial core cultivators, especially those who were panicking. There are more than 200 primordial core cultivators here. This is a huge number, but most of you should know what kind of trash you are. You are ordinary primordial core cultivators that no forces want. At most, you can only take a few hundred cannon fodder to fly in the sky and do some plundering. Moreover, you have to face the danger of losing your life at any time. But what do you get? Nothing. Some of you can't even get a single primordial core cultivator after years of hard work. The group of primordial core cultivators lowered their heads and remained silent. But the treatment that Zi Chen gave you is a primordial core cultivator, 100,000 primordial stones per year, and a drop of primordial core cultivator for free. Such treatment is far better than the treatment of the primordial core cultivators in the overlord forces. It is even better than the treatment of the primordial core cultivators. But now, look at your cowardice. Do you deserve such treatment? Wang Qiong's voice was very loud, almost roaring. Although it was unpleasant to hear, it was the truth. In terms of treatment, they were more than 10 times better than the primordial core cultivators of the Overlord forces, and even better than the primordial core cultivators of the Overlord forces. However, their own strength was not even comparable to the ordinary primordial core cultivators. Wang Qiong's impolite words made many primordial core cultivators unhappy. They were not convinced, but no one dared to refute. You are all primordial core cultivators, but they are stronger than you, but their treatment is not even 1/10 of yours. If they dare to fight with their lives on the line, why don't you dare? Just a mere 100 primordial core cultivators and you are already scared. You don't even have the slightest bit of fighting spirit and want to run away. Then let me ask you, what are you doing here? Are you here to be our masters? Or are you here to let Zichen give you a sky-high treatment so that you can enjoy your old age here? You are going too far. We are people of the Bedlam lands. We have already seen countless deaths and disregarded them. When we first came here, we naturally came here with the heart to fight. However, we came here to fight, not to die. A bunch of motley crew wanting to fight against the primordial core cultivators of the Overlord forces is clearly courting death. You gave us a sky-high treatment just to send us to our deaths. Suddenly, a voice sounded from the crowd. It was a primordial core cultivator who had arrived later. He was not the only one. The other primordial core cultivators were the same. They had come here with the heart to fight. However, the battles of primordial core cultivators they had seen before were at most 20 people. As for the upcoming battle of hundreds of primordial core cultivators, they had never even heard of it, let alone experienced it. Therefore, when they heard that there were more than 100 primordial core cultivators on the other side, they were all afraid. Wang Qiong looked at the other party and asked indifferently, "When you first came here, we did not force you, right? You did not force me. Everything was voluntary. However, I am not willing now. In any case, you did not give me any elixir weapons, nor did you give me any yuan stones. I did not even see the shadow of the so-called yuan liquid. Since I did not take your things, it has nothing to do with you. So, goodbye." Primordial core cultivators finished speaking in one breath. He felt more or less magnanimous, and his expression also became arrogant. At the same time, he looked at the other primordial core cultivators beside him and said, "The sky-high treatment they gave you is all a scam. They just want you to die for nothing. You have to be alive to take the sky-high treatment. You have to be alive to spend it. Follow me." The expressions of the others changed, and they were hesitant. Wang Qiong smiled faintly and said, "Since you want to leave, fine. We will send you on your way. There is no need to send me off. I can leave on my own." "Bah! Who do you think you are? Now you want to curry favor with me. What were you doing before?" Primordial core spat at Wang Qiong. "Sending you on your way is to curry favor with you." Primordial core cultivators who had been following Zichen all had strange expressions. Seeing primordial core so arrogant, their eyes were filled with pity. Clearly, primordial core cultivators were thinking too much and did not understand the true meaning of sending him on his way. Primordial core raised his head and puffed out his chest, walking away proudly. He looked around with a strong sense of mockery in his eyes. These idiots are still not leaving? Are they waiting to die? Suddenly, the space in front of him distorted, and a white figure appeared. It was a 1-meter-long white rat. Its small eyes, which were originally very lively, were now filled with ferocity. Seeing the spirit-devouring rat, Primordial Core was suddenly stunned. His arrogant face was also filled with confusion. He did not understand why a rat would appear here. But in the next moment, he saw the white rat turn into a beam of light and charge directly at him. In this beam of light, Primordial Core sensed a dangerous aura. His expression changed instantly, but before he could put up an effective defense, the white light had already hit him. Primordial Core felt as if he had been hit by a divine mountain. His entire body was in intense pain, and his consciousness dissipated instantly. Bang! An explosion resounded in the sky. Primordial Core's body was directly smashed into pieces. Blood, flesh, and broken bones splashed in all directions, staining many of primordial core cultivators. The other primordial cores were all stunned, and their hearts trembled. Primordial core, who was known as an old monster, was actually smashed into pieces by an insignificant rat. For a moment, many primordial cores were shocked. I did not force you to come here. Everything is voluntary. But I am a force, a team. This is not your own garden. You can come and go as you please. Those who disturb the morale of my troops will be killed without mercy, primordial core cultivators said coldly. A murderous aura surged around him. His cold gaze swept across, and all the primordial cores lowered their heads, not daring to look him in the eye. In the land of chaos, a few primordial cores die every day. Don't think too highly of yourselves, not to mention primordial cores who are afraid of death. In the eyes of the big forces, you are not even worth anything. At most, you are trash. It is your great fortune that Zi Chen is willing to recruit trash like you at a sky-high price. Chapter 6:13. Wang Qiong stood in the air, looking coldly at the core realm cultivators. He was reprimanding them with his flight realm cultivation, and no one dared to refute him. Obviously, he already had the means of a leader. No core realm cultivators dared to speak. Although many of them had already made up their minds to leave immediately after the battle, that was for later. At this moment, no one dared to refute Wang Qiong. Wang Shan, Wang Qiong said coldly. Here, Wang Shan stepped forward and said loudly. Give the 46 core realm cultivators who survived the first battle Yuan liquefied. They are our warriors. Wang Qiong looked at the 46 core realm cultivators who survived the first battle, and his cold expression eased a lot. Although they knew that Wang Qiong was not reprimanding them, they still felt somewhat uncomfortable. However, in the next moment, Wang Qiong gave them liquefied Yuan liquefied. Obviously, he still cared about their lives. The 46 core realm cultivators were touched and grateful. Most of them had used liquefied Yuan liquefied in the previous battle. They thought that it would be gone after consuming it, but who knew that he would give them a drop? Moreover, they had been injured in the previous battle and had used some expensive and powerful pills to heal their injuries. Just based on these 2 points, they knew that Zi Chen did not want them to die in battle. Yes, Wang Shan replied loudly. He was about to step forward and distribute the liquefied Yuan liquefied. Suddenly, he thought of something and turned to look at Wang Qiong. He pointed at the core realm cultivators and asked, what about them? Should we distribute the liquefied Yuan liquefied? Them. Wang Qiong snorted coldly and said, distribute the liquefied Yuan liquefied to those who have gone through the lightning tribulation. As for those who came out of the core formation pavilion, just give them to the core warriors. It's a waste to give them the liquefied Yuan liquefied to such trash. 1 drop is worth 30,000 high-grade Yuan stones. Do they really think we are rich? Yes, Wang Shan replied respectfully. The core realm cultivators' faces were ashen. Liquefied Yuan liquefied at the critical moment could save a life, but without it, it was equivalent to losing something that could save their lives. Behind Wang Qiong, the eyes of Tyrant and the others were filled with admiration. In a short moment, Wang Qiong had recovered the low morale. No matter whether these core realm cultivators were angry, humiliated, unwilling, or had other thoughts, they would not run away again. Moreover, when the next battle began, they would not have any problems. After settling the problem, Wang Qiong went to Longhu to discuss the details of the second battle. There were a total of 15 forces that had come to annihilate the barbarians. Just as Wang Qiong had guessed, they weren't united and were in a state of disunity. There were even some forces that had been in conflict with each other. 15 forces meant that there were 15 leaders. Everything they did had to be discussed first. There was no one who could give orders, so they were determined not to make a move unless they could use force. Therefore, before they arrived, they carefully studied the first battle between the barbarians and the 8 forces. From there, they came up with a marvelous psychological attack. They made the inner core cultivators of the barbarians flee madly out of fear. When all the inner core cultivators ran away and only a few barbarians were left, the group of inner core cultivators would attack together and kill the barbarians with lightning speed, seizing their resources. They still didn't know that their marvelous psychological attack had been broken by Wang Qiong's words. The inner core cultivators they sent out did not see any inner core cultivators running away from the barbarians. They thought that the pressure was not great, so they slowed down again. They were supposed to reach the barbarians in 7 days, but they were delayed to 10 days. However, as the days passed, they still didn't get the result they wanted. Just as they were wondering why, an early inner core cultivator suddenly came to report that the inner core cultivator who went out early in the morning to monitor the barbarians did not return on time. Damn it, why is it like this? Were they all killed by the barbarians? This was the 5th inner core cultivator who had disappeared in the past few days. The experts of the various forces were finally angry. After waiting for a day and a night, the inner core cultivators still did not return. The various forces guessed that the other party was really dead. They had been here for a few days, and they hadn't fought a single battle with the barbarians, but they had already lost 5 people. Moreover, their perfect psychological attack didn't scare away a single inner core cultivator. Clearly, it was ineffective. The mid-inner core cultivators of the various forces were the leaders, which meant that they were the 15 leaders. The anger in their hearts finally burned fiercely, and they decided to work together to destroy the enemy. Therefore, after careful discussion, they chose to directly and decisively push through. According to their original plan, the rest of the journey would still take 2 days. However, after rushing at full speed, they arrived at their destination in less than half a day. However, when they arrived with murderous intent, they found that the barbarians had already brought all their inner core cultivators and been waiting for them for a long time. The leader was an unfamiliar youth. Although he was also in the flight realm, he was not the Zi Chen that they saw in the portrait. I thought you would take 2 more days to arrive. Wang Qiong smiled faintly from 1,000 meters away. Barbarians, today is the day you die, the leader of the inner core cultivators shouted from afar. We will only know who lives and who dies after we fight, Wang Qiong replied coldly. Behind him, close to 200 inner core cultivators surged with murderous intent. You cultivators of the outer forces, let me tell you, these barbarians not only offended us, they also offended the 5 overlords of Chaos City. They have already become the scurrying rats of the Bedlam lands. Now, I will give you a chance to choose. If you leave now, we promise to let bygones be bygones. But if you insist on attacking us, you will die. The inner core cultivators shouted from afar. He thought that when he said that, the crowd would be shocked, and then their bodies would tremble in fear, causing a commotion. Their morale would plummet, and they would all flee madly. However, the truth was that after these inner core cultivators heard that, they were indifferent. If there was a change in their bodies, it would be that the murderous intent around them surged even more intensely. Are you stupid? The barbarians have offended the entire Bedlam lands. Don't tell me you want to follow them and become enemies with all the forces in the Bedlam lands. Another inner core cultivator threatened. However, this kind of threat was practically useless, at least for now. After Wang Qiong's previous words and the thunderous methods he had displayed, no one dared to withdraw from the battle at this moment. They had clearly expressed their attitude that this battle would be fought to the death. Damn it, why is it like this? The inner core cultivator cursed in his heart, flustered and exasperated. Although the enemy was a bunch of weaklings, they were still inner core cultivators. Although they couldn't fight one-on-one, they had no problem ganging up on them. In such a battle, if they wanted to successfully kill all the barbarians, they would have to sacrifice a lot of their subordinates. Before they could continue to threaten the barbarians, they discovered that the barbarians had suddenly retreated. Want to run? Impossible, you will all die today. The leader of the inner core cultivators sneered and was about to give the order to chase. Suddenly, several explosions sounded from the ground, and dust flew everywhere. Then, figures rushed out from the ground, emitting powerful auras. There were a total of 10 figures, representing the 10 primordial Dan experts. Each of them emitted a dazzling light that was like a sun. Moreover, each of them had a destructive aura that caused all the primordial Dan experts to tremble. They soared into the air, with crazy calmness on their faces, and rushed madly towards the enemy inner core cultivators. The moment they heard the explosions, the enemy inner core cultivators thought that there was an ambush. When they saw the 10 of them appear, they thought that they were going to launch a sneak attack. Disdainful smiles appeared on their faces, but when they felt the destructive aura around them, their disdainful smiles froze on their faces. This was because this was not a sign of a sneak attack, but a sign of self-destruction. The 10 inner core cultivators who rushed out and were about to self-destruct without saying a word made the enemy inner core cultivators widen their eyes in shock. If this was a greeting gift from the barbarians, it was too precious and too terrifying. This is self-destruction. Run. Get out of here quickly. Rush out quickly. The 10 inner core cultivators were about to self-destruct at the same time, so the power was naturally terrifying. The inner core cultivators of the various forces instantly became chaotic. Then, there was chaos. Shouts, roars, and curses rang out continuously. The inner core cultivators surged all the inner core energy in their bodies and rushed out in all directions as fast as they could. They were trying to escape the range of the self-destruction of the inner core cultivators. Unfortunately, this was a scene that had been carefully calculated. As soon as the 10 of them appeared, they formed a circle. The aura of the self-destruction of the inner core cultivators would cover a radius of several miles in an instant. No one could escape. A mid-stage inner core cultivator wanted to use his extreme speed and powerful strength to first kill the self-destructing inner core cultivator. However, before he could reach the other party, the destructive aura in the other party's body surged to the limit and then exploded with a boom. When they rushed out from the ground, the 10 of them had activated the destructive energy of their inner core cultivators to prevent the mid-stage inner core cultivators from suddenly being killed. Moreover, when they were prepared in advance, this kind of self-destruction could not be interrupted. Unless they had Zi Chen's extreme speed. Boom. 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 The 10 inner core cultivators self-destructed one after another. The sound of explosions rang out continuously. Wave after wave of destructive aura rippled and spread out, enveloping all the opposing inner core cultivators within a radius. The void shattered under the destructive aura. Huge black holes appeared in the sky one after another. As the destructive aura surged, shrill screams rang out continuously in the sky. Behind Wang Qiong, all the inner core cultivators were stunned. Their eyes were filled with shock. They had never imagined that Wang Qiong would choose such an extreme method to fight. Making 10 inner core cultivators self-destruct at the beginning was too terrifying. The destructive aura rippled. Screams rang out continuously. Blood rained down, and broken limbs fell. The power of the self-destruction of the 10 inner core cultivators was too strong. Everyone wondered if even half of the 100 inner core cultivators would still be alive after the destructive aura dissipated. Originally, they did not have any advantage. However, because of the self-destruction of the 10 inner core cultivators, their disadvantage turned into an advantage. Chapter 6:14. Those who rushed out of the destructive energy were all primordial core cultivators who were lucky enough not to die. Although they were lucky enough to survive the self-destruction of their primordial core cultivators, they were more or less injured. Poof! Blood sprayed out in the sky. A mid-stage primordial core cultivator rushed out of the destructive energy. He was too close to the self-destructing cultivator, so he was directly hit by the destructive energy, causing him to be seriously injured. As soon as he rushed out, he angrily cursed, "Damn barbarians, I will not let you go. I will not let you go either." A cold voice suddenly sounded in the mid-stage primordial core cultivator's mind. The void behind him suddenly broke open, and the devil ape's tall figure walked out. He held the black rod tightly in his hand. As soon as he walked out of the void, he struck out with a powerful attack. A sharp whistle sounded in the air. The black rod fell down with great force, its speed almost reaching the limit. The mid-stage primordial core cultivator only had time to turn around and look up. Then he looked at the black rod that was already above his head in shock. Pang! The black rod hit the mid-stage primordial core cultivator's body, causing a loud bang. All the primordial core cultivators in the distance looked at this scene in shock. They saw the black rod land on the mid-stage primordial core cultivator's head. A destructive energy swept over him. With a boom, The mid-stage primordial core cultivator's body exploded. A spiritual thought rushed out from the exploded body. This was the mid-stage primordial core cultivator's soul. The devil ape's attack only destroyed the opponent's physical body, but it did not destroy the opponent's soul. But before the soul could escape, the devil ape's second attack landed like lightning. The space trembled again. A terrifying energy surged. The mid-stage primordial core cultivator's soul was instantly shattered by the black rod. A mid-stage primordial core cultivator was killed by the devil ape with 2 rods. This scene shocked everyone. Both the primordial core cultivators and the enemy primordial core cultivators were shocked. Kill. In the distance, Wang Qiong also gave the order. As the cold voice sounded, the primordial core cultivators rushed toward the enemy primordial core cultivators like crazy. All kinds of lights flashed between heaven and earth. A fierce battle broke out. This was a fierce and tragic battle. As soon as the battle started, many primordial core cultivators had already died. And there were sounds of self-destruction from time to time. The primordial core cultivators were not the only ones who were crazy. The enemy primordial core cultivators were also crazy. Boom. The body of a heavily injured enemy Dan Essence Realm cultivator exploded. Knowing that he was going to die, he decisively self-detonated his Dan Essence. The destructive energy directly swept through the 4 Dan Essence Realm cultivators. Kill. The 14 mid-Yuan Dan experts also charged into the crowd and began a wild massacre. Even though Longhu, Zhong Haotian, Mo Yuan and the rest were there to stop them, they still managed to gain the upper hand due to their numerical advantage. The desperate chaotic battle continued. Core essence cultivators were dying almost every second. The chaotic battle in the air continued, but on the ground, another 10 Dan essence experts rushed out. The moment they appeared, they flew close to the ground, leaving the battlefield at the fastest speed possible. Deep underground, Zi Chen, who was undergoing the baptism, was drowning in endless pain. He sat cross-legged in a huge energy bubble. Around him, there were all kinds of ancient beast essence blood, as well as all kinds of precious medicines and spiritual herbs. Below the bubble, there was deep blue earth fire. The earth fire burned fiercely, sending endless heat to melt the essence blood. The bubble blocked the transmission of sound. Only Zi Chen's painful expression could be seen. If one was inside the bubble, they would be able to hear the low growls coming from his throat. Inside the bubble, besides Zi Chen's growls, there were all kinds of beast roars. These were the remnant will of the ancient beasts in the essence blood. They were eroding Zi Chen's powerful spiritual thoughts. As the temperature in the bubble increased, all kinds of essence blood began to melt. Illusory figures of ancient beasts appeared one after another. They pounced on Zi Chen, biting and tearing. Zi Chen's expression became more painful. Around him, up and down, there were all kinds of small ancient beasts. They kept biting and tearing at his body. It felt as if there were tens of thousands of ants crawling and biting on his body. The pain came from all over his body. Ah! The intense pain came wave after wave. Zi Chen couldn't help but growl in pain. Pale golden blood began to flow out of the pores all over his body. As time passed, the small beasts that were tearing at him slowly turned illusory and dim. Finally, they turned into pure spiritual energy and were absorbed by Zi Chen's body. After the first wave of small beasts disappeared, there was still a second wave. These small beasts were obviously much larger in size, and the consciousness they contained was also much stronger. Under the tearing and biting, more and more light golden blood flowed out from Zi Chen's body. Zi Chen's pain increased by 30%. If the first wave of small beasts were the descendants of pure-blooded ancient beasts, then the second wave would be the kings of ancient beasts. After the second wave, there would be the third wave of ancient beasts. Finally, there would be the essence blood of dragons and tigers. The third wave of ancient beasts' essence blood was still painful for Zi Chen. The continuous pain almost made him collapse. After the third wave of essence blood was absorbed, Longhu's shadow appeared. Zi Chen was extremely weak at this moment. It was as if he had been fighting for several days and nights. He had reached his limit. He couldn't even refine the essence blood of an ancient beast king, let alone another pure-blooded ancient beast. Moreover, Zichen felt that if he continued to be attacked by the pain, he would faint. Longhu rushed out of the essence blood and looked at Zichen coldly. The expected scene of Longhu pouncing on Zichen didn't happen. It was like a real king, standing in front of Zichen and looking down at the tiny Zichen. Longhu stood in front of him and looked at Zichen with contempt. Its expression seemed to be thinking and intelligent. Longhu didn't attack for a long time. While Zichen was puzzled, he also felt a little happy. He thought that it wasn't a bad thing that the other party was waiting for him to refine it. However, when Zichen's spiritual thoughts landed on Longhu's body, he felt as if he had landed on a lump of iron. He couldn't refine it at all. Longhu was like a solid body without any flaws. How is this possible? Zichen's weak face was filled with surprise. He opened his eyes wide and looked at Longhu again. Longhu's mouth moved slightly and gave him a mocking expression. It stood proudly with a look of disdain and mockery. It seemed to be saying, "I'm a supreme beast. How can an ant like you refine me?" Seeing Longhu's expression, Zichen was furious. He could even subdue the real Longhu Supreme, let alone a mere drop of essence blood. Moreover, as the strongest perfect body among humans, its height shouldn't be inferior to Longhu Supreme's at all. Therefore, after a roar, Zichen increased the strength of the refinement. At the same time, he gathered all his spiritual thoughts and attacked Longhu. Bang! Under the powerful impact of the spiritual thoughts, Longhu's body suddenly trembled. It was originally a whole body, but its body loosened a little. Then, a wisp of energy escaped from its body and entered Zichen's body. This was only a wisp of energy, which was equivalent to a drop in the ocean. It was completely negligible. Longhu's expression became even more arrogant and looked at Zichen with disdain. However, a smile appeared on Zichen's face. Although a drop in the bucket was negligible, he saw some hope. If he could absorb a strand of chi with one attack, then he could absorb even more with a few more attacks. Longhu, who was standing still, would be exhausted sooner or later. Therefore, Zichen, who saw hope, began to gather his spiritual thoughts and attacked Longhu again and again. Longhu was also constantly releasing its energy during the attacks. Days passed. Longhu's solid figure slowly became illusory during the attacks. After thousands of attacks, Longhu's body collapsed. At this point, all the essence blood, ancient herbs, precious herbs, and spiritual herbs had melted into liquid and merged together. Under the burning of the earth fire, the liquid made gurgling sounds. Zichen was in the middle of the medicinal liquid. All he needed to do was to absorb, refine, and transform. The loud sounds between heaven and earth continued, and the fierce battle continued. However, after the shock of the 10 primordial core experts' self-detonation passed, the battle slowly reached a balanced stage. More than half of the 100 primordial core experts of the opposing forces had died. 5 mid-stage primordial core experts had also died. However, the 10 mid-stage primordial core experts who were still alive chose to join forces and formed a strong battle force. This caused Longhu, the demonic ape, and the others who were preparing to attack them one by one to lose their target. Moreover, they could only hold them back and could not continue to kill them. During this period, Haifeng had directly swallowed a precious pill because he had suffered a fatal injury. He had successfully saved his life. At this moment, he was fighting against the mid-stage primordial core experts with the others. However, they had fewer people than the mid-stage primordial core experts. At this moment, it was already very difficult for them to resist. Moreover, in such an evenly matched battle, the fact that they did not have enough elemental energy to fly was completely exposed. If Wang Shan and the others had not been swallowing elemental liquid, they would have been slaughtered because of the depletion of their energy. Wang Shan, Wang Qiong, Wang Xian Wild Wolf, Haifeng, Zhong Haotian, Longhu, and the demonic ape. The 8 of them blocked the 10 mid-stage primordial core experts. This was undoubtedly a miracle. However, the 8 of them could not hold on any longer and were showing signs of defeat. On the other side of the battlefield, the early-stage primordial core experts on Zichen's side were also beginning to die in large numbers. If it were not for the spirit-devouring rats, Wu Mo, and the others, they would have been defeated and fled. Even so, there were still a few primordial core experts who took advantage of the chaos to escape. This time, the spirit-devouring rats did not have time to catch up with them. The 10 mid-stage primordial core experts suppressed Wang Qiong and the others, forcing them to retreat continuously. At this moment, they could only defend and were unable to counterattack. However, these 10 mid-stage primordial core experts did not dare to casually send out one of them to rescue the other primordial core experts. This was because there was still a person watching them covetously in the dark. Although the other party only attacked 3 times each time, it was still a threat to them. "All of you, stop and come back," a mid-stage primordial core expert suddenly shouted. When the other primordial core experts heard this, they all stopped and quickly flew over. However, during this time, 2 of them were still killed by the spirit-devouring rats. Soon, the opposing primordial core experts had all returned. Among the group of early-stage primordial core experts, only 30 were left alive. However, in Zichen's side, less than 20 primordial core experts had returned. The rest of the primordial core experts either watched from afar or took the opportunity to escape. Chapter 6:15. There were close to 30 primal core realm experts who took advantage of the chaos to escape. The moment the battle stopped, they picked up the spirit rings, elixir weapons, and energy primal core realm experts on the ground and left quickly without looking back. As for the primal core realm experts in the distance, there were also close to 30 of them. They ignored the escaping primal core realm experts and just watched from afar. They did not choose to escape immediately, but they did not come to help either. The spirit-devouring rat flew back with a dozen other primal core realm experts and met up with Wang Qiong and the others. Seeing the escaping primal core realm experts, Wang Shan was furious. However, he could not stop them because the 10 mid-stage primal core realm experts were staring at them. They only had the power to defend and did not have the power to fight. Naturally, they did not dare to divert their attention to kill others. Ha. The 10 mid-stage primal core realm experts laughed one after another. Each of them had a gloating expression on their faces. This scene was indeed as they had expected. It was originally an evenly matched battle, but because of the word stop, the distance between them instantly widened. At this moment, there were less than 30 primal core realm experts on the side of the barbarians. On their side, there were more than 40 primal core realm experts, including 10 mid-stage primal core realm experts. The outcome of this battle was already clear. The barbarians would definitely lose. "What else do you have to say before you die?" a mid-stage primal core realm expert said mockingly. "We will not die," Wang Shan said coldly. "Ha, you will not die." The primal core realm experts laughed loudly as if they had heard the funniest joke. The other primal core realm experts also laughed, disdain in their eyes. They could see the outcome of this battle at a glance, but the barbarians actually refused to admit it. "You will not die, but will we be the ones to die?" a primal core realm expert asked with a smile. "You will not leave alive. You will definitely die," Wang Qiong said coldly. Ha, I think you barbarians are all stupid. You have no advantage in terms of numbers and strength. If you don't die, who will? Another person said disdainfully. "Of course you will die." A cold voice suddenly sounded, followed by an explosion from the ground. As dust flew, a figure emitting golden light soared into the sky. That figure exuded a powerful aura, giving off an indescribable pressure. When he soared into the sky, that figure was already wearing a black robe when he descended from the sky. However, his black clothes still couldn't block out the endless golden light that surrounded him. He was like a golden armored war god that descended from the sky. Boom! The void was like the earth. As the other party stepped on it, ripples appeared. Then, a series of pitch-black cracks appeared under his feet and spread out like a spider web. Shattering the void with a single step, such a powerful force caused the expressions of the core origin stage cultivators to change. However, when they saw the appearance of the golden figure, they all cried out in alarm. "It's you, Zichen." Before they came, they had seen Zichen's portrait. He was the leader of the barbarians, but they had not seen him in the previous battle. Seeing Zichen appear, Wang Qiong and the others were delighted. Obviously, after the baptism, Zichen's battle strength should be stronger. It should not be a problem for him to deal with these mid-stage core origin stage cultivators. They had been relying on Old Tortoise because Zichen had released Old Tortoise during the baptism. He said that in times of crisis, Old Tortoise could help them regardless of his status. Zichen's appearance now saved Old Tortoise the need to act. Their final trump card was still hidden. After quickly scanning the battlefield, Zichen communicated with Longhu telepathically. He understood the whole story as quickly as possible, including the escape of the core origin stage cultivators. Longhu was very angry about this, so he was the first to inform Zichen. The golden light on Zichen's body was still flashing. Waves of unstable aura escaped from the surface of his body. The pressure around him was still there. He calmly glanced at the core origin stage cultivators who were watching from afar. Their hearts trembled, and they all lowered their heads. Zichen retracted his gaze and looked at the core origin stage cultivators in front of him again. Looking at the 10 core origin stage cultivators in front of him, his face was cold. "Today, none of you will leave here alive," Zichen said coldly. "You're just a Zephyr cultivator. What arrogance. Let's see how you're going to kill us today." After Zichen's appearance, the mid-stage core origin stage cultivators calmed down. So what if he was the leader of the barbarians? After all, he was just a Zephyr cultivator. He could not be that strong. Moreover, they had 10 mid-stage core origin stage cultivators and 30 early-stage core origin stage cultivators who had resisted the heavenly thunder tribulation. How could they be afraid of a mere late-stage Zephyr cultivator? Spread out and surround them. None of you will survive today. Zichen did not say too many harsh words. He only said the last sentence coldly. Behind him, the group of cultivators did not doubt the credibility of Zichen's words in the slightest. They chose to trust him unconditionally. They instantly spread out and flew forward, surrounding the 40 primordial core cultivators from all sides. "Haha, you're just 20 core origin stage cultivators and 10 Zephyr cultivators. You dare to surround us?" Seeing this scene, the core origin stage cultivators did not feel nervous. Instead, they could not help but laugh, their faces full of mockery. But soon, they could not laugh anymore. Because Zichen, who had not moved before, made his move in the next moment. Silver heavenly thunder wings appeared on his back. Silver light flashed, and his body emitted a brilliant golden light. This time, the gold and silver merged. As he flapped his wings, he turned into a beam of light and rushed toward one of the mid-stage core origin stage cultivators. The speed of the two-colored light reached a limit. Just as the ear-piercing sound was heard in the air, Zichen had already rushed to the mid-stage core origin stage cultivators. Zichen, who had reached the mid-stage core origin stage cultivators, did not stop. Instead, he chose to forcefully crash into the mid-stage core origin stage cultivator. Under a strong force, the mid-stage core origin stage cultivator was instantly sent flying. However, just as he was sent flying hundreds of meters, an explosion sounded in the air. The mid-stage core origin stage cultivator's body suddenly exploded. With one strike, Zichen had blasted apart a mid-stage core origin stage cultivator. The surrounding core origin stage cultivators were all dumbfounded. Even though they had imagined Zichen's various attack methods, they never expected him to choose such a simple, barbaric, and violent attack method. However, such a method was undoubtedly extremely shocking. After this attack, everyone was deeply shaken. Their gazes towards Zichen were filled with awe and respect. Everyone was stunned and remained motionless. Zichen also remained motionless. As for the reason why he didn't move, it was because he was embarrassed. He swore to the heavens that he had only wanted to use his fist to hit the other party. However, after the baptism, his physical strength had increased too much, causing his body to be uncoordinated. Furthermore, he had used the heavenly thunder wings to increase his speed, so he couldn't restrain himself. Therefore, he had charged forward, but he never expected to kill the other party. However, it could be seen that Zichen had gained a lot from this baptism. At the very least, his perfect body had become much stronger. Suddenly, A cold killing intent came from behind Zichen. It was a mid-stage core origin stage cultivator holding an elixir weapon and attacking Zichen. Phut! The two of them were very close. The elixir weapon instantly pierced through Zichen's body. Then, an energy surged out and completely shattered Zichen's body. However, he didn't see a drop of blood flow. The core origin stage cultivator's expression sank. Then, he felt a powerful aura appear behind him. Peng! He felt as if he had been hit by a divine mountain, and a powerful force surged out from it. Then, his body flew forward. However, during the process of flying forward, there was still a huge force crazily circulating in his body. When the huge force reached a limit, the core origin stage cultivator's body suddenly exploded, and his soul was destroyed. 2 strikes had killed 2 mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivators. If the first strike was a mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivator who was caught off guard, the death of the collision was just a coincidence. However, Zichen quickly dodged the second strike and killed the enemy with 1 strike. Such continuous and fast movements were enough to show Zichen's powerful combat strength. At the very least, he was several times stronger than before the baptism. Kill! Kill! Shouts rang out again. The other mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivators finally reacted. They all held their elixir weapons and attacked Zichen. Silver light flashed on Zichen's back. The heavenly thunder wings flapped again, and he turned into a beam of 2-colored light, moving in a small area. It was obvious that he was not proficient in controlling his speed. Every time he dodged, he either moved more or less. Fortunately, his speed was very fast, and he was always able to avoid fatal attacks in time. 8 attacks fell one after another. However, except for one that only left a shallow wound on Zichen's body, all the other attacks missed. The expressions of the primal core origin stage cultivators had completely changed. They became extremely shocked. It was unbelievable that a late-stage flight-soaring realm cultivator could be so fast. However, what was even more unbelievable was Zichen's inhuman combat strength. A golden light flashed, and he flashed in front of a mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivator, almost crashing into him. After controlling his speed as much as possible, he pointed a finger at his opponent. Boom! With just a finger, the mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivator's body exploded. Even his soul was destroyed. The only thing that was intact was the mid-stage primal core energy. Killing a mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivator with 1 attack was already a massacre. Moreover, under such extreme speed, they did not even have time to self-destruct. As for running away, that was even more unrealistic. Therefore, the mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivators were slaughtered one by Zichen under the shocked and terrified expressions of the early-stage primal core origin stage cultivators. Zichen's attack method was extremely simple. It was either a finger or a punch, but it was always a hand. Therefore, after 10 attacks, the world suddenly became quiet. As for the early-stage primal core origin stage cultivators, they had already turned into cold corpses under the powerful combat strength of the demon ape and the others. The second battle ended in a massacre. The barbarians won a complete victory. The dozen or so primal core origin stage cultivators who had chosen to fight with Wang Qiong and the others were full of excitement and pride. In the distance, the more than 30 primal core origin stage cultivators who did not choose to escape or help were all trembling in fear after seeing Zichen slaughter the mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivators. Lord, help! Lord, help!